Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 687. Hopefully, you guys have had a great Thursday. I know I've had a pretty good day myself, even better now that I've got my guest here with me tonight, Organically Blunt. How you doing, my friend? You want to tell us how you're doing and where they can find you?
Definitely. My name is Jay Blaze. I'm the host of Organically Blunt, and you can find us on Instagram at Organically Blunt. You can find us anywhere you play podcasts, any platforms out there at Organically Blunt. And you can find us at organicallyblunt at gmail.com if you want to reach us with a personal message.
Right on. Right on. So, I feel a little rusty jumping in on this after the
Sure.
break, man. But we start this off right from the beginning, man. When was the first time you used cannabis? When did cannabis come into your life, my friend?
I was about 16 years old and I didn't get to just try cannabis. I got to try what they call Special K. And I didn't know it at the time. My buddy, he lived across the street and he's like, hey man, let's go out and smoke this out back. And I'm like, all right. So we smoke it, and next thing we know, we're seeing tie-dye donuts and little green men running around and we're blown out of our mind. And that was my first time. And my first time for regular cannabis, I had to been probably with my buddy Nick. I won't say his last name just to protect his image, but was probably back in high school, across the street from the high school. We skipped school and we smoked the doobie, and the rest was history. I mean, here I am today.
Right on. So I guess it's a fair question to say that K2 and cannabis are two very different things. So
Yep,
did after that experience, did it make you a little leery of cannabis or
it
did
did
it
for
have
it
a
did
whole
for about
different
a year.
expectation?
Yeah, definitely. It did for about a year. I didn't want to touch it. I was nervous. I was like, man, if that's how it's going to be, I don't want none of that. Being somebody that has ADHD, you can only imagine how that really blows your imagination totally out of the water. I mean, because you're already creative and then you add that on top of it and you're seeing all kinds of shit you've never even imagined. Definitely. It was quite an interesting day, to be very blunt. Definitely.
So do you remember what it was that you of the real cannabis that you smoked the first time?
The first time I smoked was with some white widow that he had. I don't know where he got it. I'm sure his dad probably grew it or something like that. And it was excellent. And then it went down the line from there. We tried our AK-47s, our OG Cushes, and stuff like that. He always seemed to have the plug on where to get it. And as crazy as it was, we had this spot in our hometown, um, right next to the railroad tracks. And you knew something was going down, but it was a one blinking light town. And you pull up to the railroad tracks. I rode up there on my BMX. That's how young I was. And meet my buddy. He's got a car, cop in the passenger seat. We shoot the shit. We smoke a couple J's. I get to listen to some good tunes, hear what's new, because I was pretty sheltered, to be honest. And it was great. I'm not saying I was full out sheltered, but as far as just like a small town, we didn't really leave the town a whole lot. So we didn't get to experience a lot of the stuff the big people and the big name cities got to. And, I'm not even saying I'm from a big city now. Muskegon's pretty decent sized city in West Michigan, but it's, we were in a lot smaller of a community. And like I said, a one blinking light town. We had a gas station, we had a post office, a fire barn, and that was about it other than the high school. I mean, it's pretty small town. Definitely. My graduating class was 84 people. I mean, definitely.
That's a pretty small town.
Yeah,
Michigan does have some gems though, as far as like small towns go.
definitely. Yeah.
So how did it
So,
progress from there? I mean, was it like an everyday thing? Did you fall immediately in love with it? I mean, what drew you in?
well, I started, like I said, when I was about 16. I took a year off. I tried it again at 17. Took some more time off of smoking, to be honest. Hit it back up hard when I was 18. Because at 18, I was diagnosed with what they call sinusitis, which later turned into sinus cluster headache syndrome. So basically, I get headaches that cause me to black out. The pain is excruciating to the point that nothing works, because on top of that, I have alopecia. I have alopecia areata, and it's an autoimmune disease that causes my hair follicles to fall out. As they grow, it's almost like an extreme sunburn coming in for me, and my hair follicles burn. They don't get pigment, and anything that's an anti-inflammatory, I'm allergic to. So I can't take Tylenol, I can't take Advil. I'm not even supposed to eat mashed potatoes because the starch in it is actually an anti-inflammatory. As crazy it is, I'm lactose. No, no, no penicillin, amoxicillin, no nicotine consumption, no anything like that. So, my doctor at 18 years old is when I became legally allowed to smoke cannabis. And that was because he prescribed it to me through a medical standpoint, because I had to have a way to deal with my pain. And since then, it's always been a daily regimen for me. And, I would get 2, 3 headaches a week to the point that I would be screaming. And now I'm lucky if I get maybe at the most 3 a month. So it's definitely helped. And my hair is starting to grow back. I'm using a lot of hemp products outside of cannabis too, such as shampoos and conditioners. And because the only way to really, there's no cure for alopecia. And the thing with it is, they say it's stress induced, but they haven't proven it. And then on top of that, there's other things it can lead to. There's even points where it can lead to the worst thing is kidney failure. And you don't really want to deal with that neither. So I try to stay healthy as much as I can, and I got into cannabis a little bit more out of high school. And then I found my grandfather's bowl in his office desk. And that kind of started the whole smoking on a regimen of a daily thing at 18 back then, because I found that, and I didn't know how to roll. I still don't know how to roll that great. I'm not the greatest. I'm a cone guy. And basically, he caught me. He found it in my bedroom. I forgot to put it back one time. And come to find out, it was a hash pipe. I didn't know that. I wasn't educated on the stuff. I knew it was pretty weird tasting the first time we smoked it, and we went from there. And then I come to find out, as you get older, you find out your parents actually were growing it in the living room, and they were telling you don't touch the plants, and you didn't know what they were because you were a kid. And you get old enough, you get into the industry, and you rat your parents out. You're like, hey, you remember those plants in the living room? And they're like, you remember that? Yeah, I remember that. And they're like, you're not supposed to remember that. Or how about the time I dumped your ounce down the toilet because I didn't know what it was, and I was mad every time you guys kicked us out of the kitchen because you wanted to smoke some. That's a little bit of my story. And let's fast forward a little bit here. And 2 years ago, well, actually, let's go before that. 8 years ago, I got divorced, and my wife cheated on me. I can't have children because of other complications, and she got pregnant. We got divorced. I moved back home. My grandmother passed away after 16 hours of open heart surgery. They unfortunately ripped her aorta, and she bled out. And I had to deal with, the whole funeral, the life insurance and stuff. So that's when I really, really, really started smoking heavily. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression, and I kind of showed up. I developed a lot of social anxiety, and a lot of this stuff, like your show and my show included, have been my way of escaping that and being able to be surrounded by people. Because as the story goes on, I fast forward 7 years, and I was taking care of my grandfather. He was 80. He had prostate cancer. He went through 48 treatments of radiation and chemo, and it went benign. and then it came back and it spread from there to the rectum to the stomach. It ate him alive, basically. And 2019 rolls around. Mind you, this man taught me everything I know about cannabis, and it was a lot of the basic old school growing techniques. I'm talking burying fish, using topsoil, using cow manure, all naturally deprived. Where we come from, we barter. We might trade a case of beer for a whole load of cow shit. It's just how it works out here. We're in an agriculture county, and your neighbors check on each other and stuff. If you need a cup of sugar, they're not going to be afraid to give it to you. And when I get into the city, which is where I live now because of my situation, it's a whole different card game, because you're dealing with people getting murdered and shot a lot on a daily basis. And like I said, fast forward. So 2 years ago, I 3 days before Christmas, I came home from work. My grandfather just got home from the hospital 2.5 days prior. He was in there for COVID, 14 days. And we don't know to this day if he signed himself out or if they actually let him come home. And I sat in the parking lot for 8 hours that day, waiting for him to come outside, because he kept telling me, just wait there, I'll be out there. Finally, he came out, he went home. I went back to work, even though I didn't want to leave him alone. I had to make a living. And I came home the 23rd of December, found my grandfather face down blue, gave him CPR, to the point that I was looking a corpse in the eyes, and for the second time, basically. And had dispatch on the phone. I slapped him in the face. That's how angry I was that he left me. And I still feel guilty for that today, but I lived in my house from that point, from December 23rd to April 16th. My family let me live in my childhood home. I have a mother and an uncle, which are the siblings of my grandparents, but my grandparents raised me. They've raised me since I was 14. I lived a very troubled life. And cannabis has helped me a lot because it helps me deal with a lot of depression and anxiety, believe it or not. And it allows me to come down to a comfortable level where I'm not afraid to talk. And yeah, so long story short, I had to deal with all that. And my family served me eviction notices in my own home. And they, yeah. So, being that I wanted to have a good renter's profile for whatever the future may hold, I left before it went to court. Technically I had 60 days when they give you 30 in the state of Michigan. It's 30 days before they file a motion, and then you have 30 days. And I left right at the 30th mark. I was stubborn, but during the whole time I was living there after my grandfather passed, it was like they were doing an estate sale. I'd come home from work and there'd be people I didn't know in my house buying shit right out of my house. It got to the point when I did leave, I had to go to a storage unit 10 by 10 and put my whole house, my whole life in there, and I did it. I lived in my car this was all last year. I lived in my car for 10 months, roughly, from the time he died, 10 months. And, going to Planet Fitness, using the monthly membership for a hot shower every day. When you're alone, you don't need a refrigerator, especially if you're living in a car or something. So you don't got to worry about food. You eat out every day. And with my job, I can afford it. It's just I couldn't find housing, especially with the way the market is. So I worked 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, and I saved every penny I could. Finally, I found my house and I paid cash. I don't have a payment. And this is just my story, and I don't mean to blab on, but it's just my story. And, I bought this home, and it still don't feel like a home to me. It's a house. A home is full of love. When you go home and it's empty, and you leave and it's empty, and you're always alone, it gets hard. So cannabis allowed me, like I said, to open up to the point that I started a podcast of my own called Organically Blunt. I had the name in my back pocket for a couple of years. even when my grandfather was alive. I wanted to start something that we could take what he taught me and what I learned from other people, including other people in the industry. And I hope you don't mind if I give a couple names out here. My buddy Chris, he owns a store up in Newaygo, Michigan called Country Roots. He owns his own soil line. You'll see him at a lot of events this summer. This guy, he's the one that actually got me my full card when it was time. And he's the guy that got me to growing my own because I was buying it, and it got expensive. And especially back then, I mean, the market's a lot more depleted now. I mean, locally, we're seeing ounces go for $40, as crazy as it sounds. And back when I started, they'd go for 2.25, 250 plus. And it's a big difference. It's oversaturating to the point that, I mean, my shirt, you can't really see it. It says support black market weed because I support the growers. I mean, because I was one and I am one, and I still will be till the day I die because I know what I'm putting in my body. Just like you, when you grow your vegetables or anything else, you know, you know what you're putting into the product, so you know what's coming out of the product, so you know what's putting in your body. So I grow on a lot of organic standpoints and always have, but I'm opening the doors to synthetics and trying different things, but between all these people I've met along the way, they've kind of allowed me to learn to the point that was my grandfather's legacy. And that's why I started my own show, was to expand his legacy. His legacy was to re-educate, and he always wanted to re-educate. And it started with me, and I would teach somebody else, and then so on and so forth. And that's just how it went, definitely. And that's what the whole message behind my show is. I'm not out there to compete. I'm not out there to be the biggest or the richest or grow the best bud. I'm simply out there to, maybe I can teach somebody and help somebody in some way. Growing, life, anything, we try, because that's just what it's about, and we believe if you help somebody and pay it forward, it'll come back to you when you need it. And that's the way it's worked, I mean, and I'm blessed, I'm in this home, and I did it all on my own, but I've been involved with the entertainment industry myself since I was 16 years old as a photographer. And I used to work for a company called Clear Channel Broadcasting. They're now called iHeartRadio. And I used to be a nightclub photographer at Club 6 in Grand Rapids when that was a whole thing. It was basically 3-story nightclub, and I did the photos and learned a lot of the industry. I didn't get paid. It was more of a bartership, I did it on the weekends. I got to get in for free. I got to meet the celebrities. And I took my marketing degree in college and my graphic design. And I said, hey, I'm not utilizing this stuff. Let's put it to use and let's start something. And that's where I'm at today. And that's me in a nutshell. I mean, I don't know if you have any questions for me or anything of that sort that's popped up, but I'm always learning something, and I'll admit there's times I say things wrong, or there's times that people prove me wrong on things that I may relearn. But once you learn something and you learn it and you're like, oh, I made the mistake, and you own up to it, you're like, okay, well, let's take that ball, reform it, and roll it back down the hill and see what we hit, because that's just definitely how it goes. And we're going to be doing a lot of events this year. I'm getting into more events, trying to expand myself, not necessarily just the show, but myself, meet new people, network, kind of get a new group of friends, because a lot of my friends, they just kind of disappeared. Some of them don't support the cannabis industry, and some of them do. And it's my medicine on a daily basis. So, I can't change who I am. I mean, so, if I want to continue to operate every day and not have the headaches and the sinus problems, because when I do have my headaches, most people are like, well, headache, it's like migraine, it's bad. No, when mine, they trigger my sinuses. So imagine that you just got the flu and your head is plugged up and that pressure and the nausea and it feels like you're dizzy and your head's like a balloon kind of floating. That's what mine are like. And it's no fun. It's definitely no fun. I found out the hard way that I had it. First time I got the headache, I was in the shower and I blacked out and I fell and my parents found me. I hit my head and everything. They had to rush me to the hospital. And that's when they found out that I have all the things that I had. And cannabis was the way to go because as I was taking the anti-inflammatories, my hair was falling out. It started on my legs, then it went to the back of my head and went to my beard here, which still I'm fighting with and it's coming back. But the only way to cure it, they put steroid shots in your skull, but no insurance covers it. It's $700 a month per shot, and I can't afford that. So then the closest thing I dealt with was cannabis. And I've talked to a few of my genetic partners that I work with, and with Michigan trying to push and some of the cities already with the microdosing of the psychedelic mushrooms and stuff like that, people say I should give it a try because it might in a microdose actually help me, but I'm not educated enough on it. I want to become educated more, but I don't want to, like I told people, I don't want to get to the point where I'm tripping. I don't need that because I don't know how I'll react to it. So I'd rather be safe than sorry. Definitely. So yeah, but do you have any questions for me? I mean, anything you can think of.
First off, Chad is saying, in particular, DP710 there is saying that mushrooms are supposed to be great for headaches.
Yeah, that's what
So,
I'm told. Definitely.
um, I can very much appreciate your humble story and relate to it, to be honest with you. A lot of the
Definitely.
parts of it. You've been through some shit, brother.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. The first time I found out I had alopecia, I was getting my hair cut. And the barber says to me, "Do you got cancer?" Because I had a hair spot missing in the back of my head and I didn't know it. And because you don't feel it fall out, your head might get cold. Like if you cut your hair real short, like typically I cut my hair at a number one just because I like it to fade in a little bit better. And uh when you feel that breeze on your head, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not wearing a hat and it's cold, well, I just so happen to feel a cold spot on the back of my head on the right hand side, and I'm like, man, that feels weird, and I didn't think nothing of it. And sure enough, my barber asked me, do you got cancer? Do you know your hair's falling out? And I'm like, no, I didn't. So I go to the doctor, and they're like, well, you developed alopecia, and I'm like, great. So on top of losing everybody, that somehow got in the mix after I had it, but it wasn't like full fledged. And then after losing my grandparents, it kind of kicked in a little bit more. So when they say it is caused by stress, maybe it could be partly, and it might trigger it, but they haven't proven it. So I don't know for exactly how to explain it. I'm not a doctor, but I know that I don't want to do any opiates or any prescription medicine of that stuff. I want to stay away from that. So I try to stay all natural.
Amazing how interchangeable cannabis, I guess, can be because
Definitely.
it actually qualifies for a lot of the things that you say you can't have. Cannabis does.
Yep. Yep.
Is
Yeah.
so I guess small miracles in that aspect. So I mean, how did cannabis, once you found out that you couldn't have all these things, how did you kind of learn that cannabis could, you know what I mean, slide under the radar and help?
Well, I connected with a good friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a few years now. He lives out in LA, but he ended up being my roommate and we started growing it. and I grew it in a woodshed inside a clothing closet, I guess you'd call it, like the kind you zip up. It's kind of like a tent. And winter hit, and I didn't know nothing about it other than just I know how to grow a plant, And I was like, okay, well, let's give it a try. I bought some concentrated. I want to say it was like Miracle Grow and Miracle Grow soil, and I didn't know nothing about pH or NPK or um, measuring it out or diluting anything. So I put a couple drops in a spray bottle, didn't think nothing of it. Sprayed my plants. Come back a couple days later and they're all yellow and burnt, and I'm like, whoa, that didn't work. So then I continued, and eventually I got married a second time. Well, I'm not married now, so my luck kind of ran the same on the second. My wife wanted a kid and she cheated and got pregnant, and we got divorced again because I cannot have children. That is one of my other flaws. And so long story short, but she introduced me to cannabis, like I'd say buying it more the street use of it and side of the medical. And I started using it all the time. It became like not just a medical thing, it became like a socialization tool for me. And next thing you know, I'm growing pretty decent plants for what I thought for somebody starting out. And um, then we got divorced and I moved back home. My grandfather, he's like, well, you need your medicine, and this stuff is costing us way too much money. Let's grow it. So him being always into growing, we grew it, So me and my brother and another buddy of mine, we flattened out a 50 square foot plot, and we built 16-foot fences around it. I put 2,000-watt fence charger on it. I don't know if it was legal, but we did it. And we we went to town. We did our limit at the time. We had 12 plants in there, and I grew a couple from overseas, everything from seed. I started it in February, and I had it out by June 1st. And basically, I ordered before Seedsman became Seedsman in the US here, because they just expanded recently. You had to wait and ship it to funny ways overseas. And like we got our seeds in a box of Legos, that's a little Lego kit for kids. And they were taped to one of the Legos, and we found it and we grew it out. And what it was is, like I said, I wasn't exposed to everything like a lot of the people that are in the industry are. So I had to learn everything the hard way myself. So, I didn't know what strains were good and what ones weren't. So I purchased, and to my day, it's still one of my favorites, some wedding cake. And I grew out the wedding cake, and I put it in a 5-gallon grow bag, and we buried the grow bag in the ground when we put it outside, because I didn't know to take it off. I figured it was biodegradable, whatever. And this plant, if you look at our Instagram, it's a ways back. You can go back on at Organically Blunt. I'm sitting on a 16-foot ladder. The plant ended up being 16 and a half foot tall, and that's my prize grow there. That's the biggest plant I've grown myself. I did LST, and I just experimented with it and did defoliation even outside. And people were like, oh, that's not going to work. You're doing that stuff that's unnecessary. That's for indoor growing. And I'm like, listen, I'm just trying to do my own thing here and trying to make it work and see what works for me. And all the other plants we didn't touch. And that one just so happened to tower over it, to the point that I had to pull my motorhome in front of my grow because of prying eyes. You could see it from the road, and you drive down the road and you could see my King Cola literally blowing in the wind over the motorhome. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. Luckily, it was right before harvest, so we got it down before it drew too much attention. We didn't have anybody, unfortunately cut through the fences or anything. I mean, if they did, they would have got a hell of a shock. I still got the fence charger till this day. So that's one thing I got to keep. That's kind of funny because it's old. I'm talking, it's like an old GE fence charger for horses that he had probably when they had horses back in the day, and he just put it to use. And like I said, nobody messed with our plants and everything. And then it just kind of became a neighborhood for festivity, I guess you'd say, in our neighborhood, because next thing you know, our neighbors were growing it, and then the neighbors on the other side were growing it. The neighbors on the street across the street were growing it. We were all getting together, swapping grow techniques. And oh, have you tried the bat guano? Have you tried this? And it just became kind of like a community, I guess you'd say. And I've always, I guess, after losing my family, I kind of got into it more because it's my zen. I get in my garden, it's peaceful. I'm working with the plants. People don't believe they react to you, but they really do. I mean, and I play music for my plants. I mean, I talk to my plants. I read my plants and try to judge what they need the best I can. Sometimes I'm not always right. Sometimes I am. A lot of people say CalMag. CalMag is not always the answer. I'm going to tell you that right now. It definitely is not always the answer. But a lot of times it does. And usually it's one or the other of the mixture that it really needs, and the other one now it's just getting too much. But typically that's how it works, but not always. And like I said, we did a lot of the organic stuff. So my grandpa was big on, like, if you wanted to sweeten up your buds and you wanted to sweeten it, we'd use molasses. We'd mix it with our water. Or if it was in flour, every other flour, we'd use powdered coconut. And the powdered coconut would help. It would actually improve the taste. And if we wanted to improve nitrogen, we used powdered aloe. I mean, and just things like that. If you got bugs, especially ants, because we were outside and ants loved it where we were. Our soil wasn't the greatest. We had to build it up, and ants loved it. And then a lot of people said, well, your soil is like it's full of oil. It wasn't full of oil, but the land we lived on, they used to frack it and they used to pump for oil. My grandpa actually had the mineral rights to our land and everything. It was quite cool. So we got to know what was in our soil for soil testing. And we just added to it fish, and we didn't add like the fancy stuff that people had. And then kind of along the way, we picked up an indoor tent. We wanted to try it indoor. My grandpa more or less wanted to grow peppers inside. He was like, there's no way we can grow tomatoes and peppers in the winter in the house. And I'm like, well, let's try it. What the hell? And my first grow, we went up to the local grow shop in the little town next to us, and it's just a mom and pop little store, and they had a T5 8 bulb. I didn't know nothing about growing. And this was only just a few years ago, I want to say roughly probably 8 to 10 years ago. And we bought the tent, and it was just a cheap Vivo Sun tent, and it had light leaks, and I ripped the zipper and had to tape it, and oh, it was a mess. But we put that in there, and it was an eight light T5, and it grew okay, And then all of a sudden, I was under a different brand at the time. We actually changed our brand. I started out as Sticky Mitts Cannabis because I actually had a vinyl and print company called Sticky Mitts Vinyl and Graphics, which I still run here and there, but not so much. It's kind of more of a hobby now. And Sticky Mitts, because it was stickers and Michigan, kind of went. And then once it got into cannabis, all the resin and all the finger hash all over your fingers when you're harvesting, it just kind of went. And I built it up from there, and I picked up my first sponsor for nutrients, which helped a lot because I didn't have a lot of money, and I picked up age-old nutrients, and they worked with me. And then a company called Motivated out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, that does apparel and stuff. They supported me, and between the two, they helped me get my ball rolling. And they were more about it for my grandpa than they were me, because they found out he had cancer, and they found out, we were going to try to make RSO. We were going to try to make something that could benefit him. So then some people might have heard the company, Magic Butter, the Magic Butter machine. Well, they heard my grandpa's story just from me talking, and they contacted me and they said, hey, we shipped you out a Magic Butter machine free. We want you guys to be able to take care of your grandfather. And we were making him edibles because he couldn't smoke because he had COPD. And it just played hell on his lungs to the point that it just wasn't for him, and he didn't really want to eat it. So we were making the RSO, and he'd do a couple drops or in his coffee, or we'd make the butter and he'd put some on his toast. But that was about as much as he would go, and he towards his last few years, and he had more energy. I mean, it was great. It was totally great. And it, it, it I was a truck driver. I went to school for truck driving. I was a mechanic 10 years prior. I was a student in suspension mechanic, and I went in truck driving school. And then once his dementia stuff got bad, it's kind of when I came back off the road, and that's when we really got into growing. I mean, this man would call me up in the morning and say, "I watered the plants," and then he'd call me up at noon. "The plants are here, looking good. They're sitting in the sun. They're soaking it up. Oh, I'm not gonna water them until 5 o'clock tonight because it's too hot, and I don't want the water to sit on the leaves and burn them." Or he'd call me up, "Oh, it's raining. I'm gonna go out there with the leaf blower and blow them off when it's done, so we don't get bud rot." It was just I think it really brought the youth out of him, and so it brought the youth out of me too, because it gave me a chance to really prosper. I mean, my last harvest, I have one jar left, and it's starting to degrade, and I'll probably never smoke it, but it's the point that it's in the jar. It was the last ones he trimmed, and I don't necessarily want to get rid of it. It might fall apart eventually, but it's kind of a sentimental thing to me. We spent 72 hours our last harvest in 1 week just trimming in our garage. I mean, I our garage was so full that, and the only way I can compare it is because I have family down south that grows tobacco. And if you've ever seen how big tobacco plants are in their leaves, well, they hang them in Kentucky. And you'll go by barns and they'll have the doors open to create a passive intake and exhaust. One side's open, one side, kind of like a greenhouse. And basically they'll be hanging. Well, it was the same way with us, but it was cannabis. I mean, and I'm not saying we had a ton, but it was a lot for somebody that never experienced that. And we basically were trimming all week, and him just sitting out there, his knees were bad. He had like a little walking thing. He's like a walker, but it had a seat on it. And he sat out there and he right beside us and trimmed right with us, like he wanted to be involved. And that's just my story with cannabis. We've done a lot of different things. I've met a lot of cool people along the way. I've worked with different events. Some that I found out, I pulled the string out at the last second because I didn't support what the big message they were behind was, because I didn't know it, and people kept telling me, and I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it until a couple days prior. And then we were like, we're not going to go in that event because, one, people are protesting that are growers. So that tells us right there. And we're for the growers. And for two, when you can't bring your own shit in that you grew, and they won't even let you bring your own cooler in when you're a vendor, you're like, well, now I got to spend all this money on top of all the money I just spent to rent my spot. And we're not selling anything. We're just a show. I mean, we're just hoping people will come and talk on our show. So we're losing out here, and so we pulled out of that event. But then that's how we got opened up to a lot of the big events that we're allowed to network with, and I'm meeting a lot of people, and that's how my cannabis experience is starting to expand and grow more, and I'm learning new things. I mean, I've tried some hydroponics. I developed some people know what it is, some people don't. I call it a grow bucket system, but the formal name is called space buckets. I don't know if you've ever seen one, but basically it's a 5-gallon bucket system. And most people use computer fans, like 80 millimeter or 120 millimeter. They create an intake and exhaust. Basically, they're mimicking a grow tent, but in a bucket system. You got to chop them up. You got to flip them. You got to put them together. There's a whole process to it. I'm not going to go over it because I don't want to let all my secrets out to how I designed mine. But basically I developed it and then I decided to one up it. So I fully automated the thing using all AC Infinity stuff. And that's kind of been my hobby lately with cannabis is my goal is to try to produce 3 ounces because the most ever produced was 2.5 to 2.78 ounces. And if I can hit the three, I've set a record. And I would love to patent the design someday. I'm not saying it's my design, but I kind of reinvented the wheel just like anybody else. And it works great. I mean, it's fully contained, it's fully discreet. You can put it in a closet and grow a plant probably about up to about 4 foot tall, if not taller. I mean, it depends on how good your light is and how much power and PPFD and everything it's putting out and how your VPDs are and all that. But it definitely it gets to the point that I'm actually using a cheap Chinese 150-watt light. It's called a UFO light, and it's producing my autoflowers on the side. I only grow autos in it just for fun. I don't do full photos or films or anything like that because you put them in there, you put them in the 3 gallon insert from the start, and you just let it do its thing. You don't have to transplant, you don't have to do anything like that. And that's kind of what started me growing after my grandfather passed because I moved into a place for a couple weeks and they didn't let me grow. And that's kind of why I ended up going to my car. It was choice. You know, I could have had a place to stay. I could have stayed with my parents, but they wanted to charge me money. But they didn't want to help me put my stuff in my storage unit. They didn't want to help me find a car. They didn't want to help me at all. And that's when I decided, hey, I guess I am truly on my own. I got myself. I'm my backup. So to this day, even with the job I work, I'm out there from basically 9 o'clock in the morning until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm 7 days a week. And people are like, man, do you ever take a day off? No, because I don't even take Thanksgiving off for Christmas. Christmas, especially because now that I've lost my grandpa so close to it, it kind of made it hard. And then my grandma prior, she was like the glue of the family. So once they both passed, my family decided not to do anything anymore. And I mean, for the past 3 years, I've ate hot dogs for Thanksgiving. I mean, and people are like, really? I'm okay with it. It's just another day for me. And then the worst part for somebody like me is everything's closed. So now I have nothing to do. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll go drive around, and I do photography on the side too. So that's my other kind of zen. And I'll go down and do photography. So, and I sit here and blab. So if you want to tell me to shut up, just let me know. But definitely and fast forward now, we're working with Big Cloud Farms. I that's where I ran into you. Long story short, I didn't even know it was you. And
Yeah.
me and my co-host were walking. We never been there before, never been to a cannabis event in our life. And we decided, well, we've been to one, it was a flea market. And the guy kind of ripped us off. I mean, he charged us $60 for three of us to get in, and we were there 45 minutes, bought a couple pre-rolls, and then the event was over. It was like it got busted, shut down, and I'm like, well, there goes that. And I won't say names because the guy's respectable. He's a good guy. He's great. I don't think it was his fault, but we ran into a lot of other people and a couple other people in the industry there, and met a couple people along the way, and then we came across Big Cloud, and I dealt with Rick out there and Laura and Dallas and all them great guys, and they opened up my eyes back to the entertainment industry because I'm half tempted to bring my camera equipment next time just because it's been so long and I'm rusty and I'm itching to get it back out. I used to do MMAs and car shows and entertainment, nightclub photography, concerts, festivals. I've got a little bit of experience in everything, and I don't really publicize it a whole lot. Like I said, I ran a website back then for entertainment called Michigan Evening Out. And back then, this was early 2000s. To have 10,000 followers back then was a lot, especially from your town. And that's what I did. And I built it up. And every week you could know what was going on. And then eventually I was on 95.7, a morning show, and I did, like 4 a.m. I had to be up and call in, and for 5:30, I had to be woke up enough and tell people what was going on. Well, now it's kind of trickled into all that experience, trickled into the cannabis industry where I really want to be. And now I'm getting to meet people and interview people of different backgrounds and hear people's stories and share them kind of like you do. That's what's great. You get to hear everybody's story. It's kind of nice to finally tell mine, I'll be honest. And I'm not one to just I don't want to self bask in it, but it's nice for somebody to actually hear my story for once instead of me listening to somebody else's, to be on the other side of the microphone, I guess you'd say. And yeah, and we've been working with Big Cloud and Michigan Gems and Genetics. We're going to be going out to their event the end of this month, and then Big Cloud is doing the Cure Michigan Cup. It's supposed to be huge, and they're bringing out the Cottonmouth Kings, and they got Mendo Dope there. So this week we just connected with Cottonmouth Kings. They added us on Instagram, and they're psyched as we are to sit down and have a sesh, because we didn't get a chance to sit down with Mendo until after the event because, well, they were just too busy and my anxiety kicked in. It was too many people at the point surrounding them that I didn't want to bug them. And they were cool with that. They respected it because they reached out afterwards and we got them on the horn kind of like this. And now we got a contact there. And then it just kind of trickled into we've met a lot of people, believe it or not, from the Humboldt area. And my next step in my journey in the cannabis industry, my goal is to eventually get out to Humboldt, and not to live, not to work, just to visit. I want to see how some of these other people do it and how their farms grow and experience it firsthand, because I haven't gotten to experience that yet. I've been to a couple greenhouse grow facilities, and when you see that much, it flabbergasts you for the first time, and you're like, wow, man, I've never seen this in my life. And then I got to experience it and see a lot of people and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and we're slowly networking with everybody. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here and tell my story, definitely, because I'm very, very appreciative of it. Definitely.
It's been an amazing journey so far, brother. That's for sure.
Definitely.
And I think it's awesome that you got to share that time with your grandpa growing cannabis. My next kind of question is that where you can use cannabis for a while and kind of know makes me feel better, notice this and that.
Yep.
But I think for a lot of people that it clicks in their head when they start to cultivate the plant, that they realize, wow, this is more to it. This is medicine.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and I
Definitely.
think
It's sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really believe in my opinion, I say this a lot. I think that the cultivation of the plant is equal to, if not greater than, the medicine itself. You know what I mean?
Definitely,
That time in your
definitely.
room and
Like
stuff.
my grandpa would say, and I mean it's not his saying, but without risk, there's no reward. So without putting the hard work in and risking potentially killing it, harming it, uh, anything, you can overfeed, you can underfeed, you can overwater, you can underwater, too much light, not enough light. I mean, there's so many factors, and you don't think of it when you're growing it. You're just like, oh, it's a plant, it'll grow itself. Well, yes, it will, but sometimes depending on the environment that it's growing in, you got to control it. And I mean, that's what's nice about indoors. You control your mother nature, you controlling the earth, wind, and fire, so they say. And outdoor, it's more natural. I prefer outdoor because it's cheaper. I'll be honest. Not necessarily on the newt side of things, because you're pumping a lot more gallons into the ground and it's not being contained in a pot. But and that's why you amend your soil and build it up and like that. So it continue to take what it needs. But Indoor, do I think it's better quality? I think it's cleaner, but I don't think it's better quality. Um, you know, I've seen a lot of people now, they're getting into bud washing, you know. I haven't used it yet, but I've watched the technique a couple times, you know, and the amount of bugs and stuff that comes off it is impressive. I was blown away, but the same point, I mean, it's just another step for a cleaner consumption, but is it required? No, we haven't never done it really all these years, but should we? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of tactics that you learn, like I said, learn along the way. There's so much into it. Every week I'm learning something new, no lie. Like I'm learning something new every week. You know, I just did I received a 1979. That was when the mother was sprouted. That's what the guy told me anyway, from a genetics buddy of mine, cut of Northern Lights. So we grew it out, and I I can tell you that plant strain is not made for indoor. It is, and if it is, it's going to get tall because we did it in the bucket system and it got so tall that it was touching my lights to the point that I burned a couple of the buds. I mean, it sucked. I caught it last minute. You know, I didn't expect them to grow that tall because with the bucket system, you have to put a spacer in to remove to raise your ceiling. Um, it's not like a grow tent where you just raise your light up on carabiners or anything like that. So you have potentially you're adding not only volume, but you're adding height at the same time. So when I say volume, you're having to move more air in, you're having to extract more air out. So it's a process, and you know, a lot of people see my setup. I'll have to shoot you a picture of it, and they're like, is that your computer or is that like an it looks like an octopus. I mean, because I got, you know, 4-inch intake and exhaust. I went 4-inch Cloudline T6, I mean T4, sorry, exhaust, and I went with their AC Infinity inlet fans, and I had a guy that does 3D printing. He printed my fan adapters and everything so that they were curved so they could fit to the buckets and everything like that. So it was sealed and so you didn't smell it. I mean, because like I said, I was staying in a place at a buddy's for a couple of weeks there and it wasn't working out. I was growing them in the closet after I developed this system because I found it on Reddit and I was like, whoa, that's crazy, you know, let's do it. You know, I don't have to buy the tent, I don't have to have the lights, even though I got all that in storage. I have nowhere to put it because I don't have my own place. And I developed that. And it's just been fun for me ever since because it gives me a chance about every 60 days to have a couple ounces. I know people are like, well, that's not very much, but it's the point of training it and LST in it. And, you know, I don't top my autoflowers. Some people do. You know, I don't film them. I just LST them. I do defoliate around day 21. And when I get into flower, like the first week, I'll do a heavy strip, but I kind of let it do its own thing. But in the bucket system, you get too many leaves and your canopy, it's kind of like scrogging. It just fills up. And then you're not getting no light to your lower buds sites. So they become larvae, they become popcorny. Sometimes you get some foxtailing. It's not very fun, but it's an experience because you get to see what with the autoflowers, which I like to grow in there, you get to see what each one does and how they turn out. Like we did a skunk number 2 or skunk number 1, sorry, skunk number 1, and the hairs on the bud turned pink. I mean, I've never seen that before, like hot pink. And I've had ones that turned blue. I've had ones that turned purple. I've had ones that turned orange, blue, and purple. And it's just the point that that's the funnest part of it. Yeah, it's fun to consume it and smoke it. Not a lot of people, I can tell you, once you get to the harvest and you've done enough of it, it's not your favorite part. they call it trim jail for a reason. I mean, when you're spending hours upon hours doing it, I can, and this is shameless plug, and I don't mean this shameless plug here, but I can tell you if you do a lot of trimming, invest in a trim bin because I never had one until recently. And to be able to sit in my chair here and trim something up and catch all the keef and be able to do it cleanly and everything like that is very nice. It's one of them great inventions that I almost wish I would have thought of it because it's one of them things you're like, why didn't I think of that? And then they got the scissors cleaner. And you're like, well, it's got a little brush and a little box. It's portable. You just move it up and down. It cleans your blade. You put some rubbing alcohol or whatever you want to use in it. I use rubbing alcohol, but and them two products right there save me so much time. I mean, and you just get to learn things along the way. I mean, nothing beats a hand trim, but when you become trapped for time, it's nice to get into something else. I can tell you the bow trimmers, they're fun. I got one sitting here. It works, but it chews them up. You lose trichomes, but it's quick if you don't have the time and you just want to get it put into a bag and start curing it or whatever. Because we just recently came across the grow bags. I don't know if you've seen them or anything like that, but they work great. I don't have time to come home and pop the jars, and it worked great for us. And we were always learning these new products that make it easier for us. And at the end of the day, and that's the nicest thing. I mean, we just got our new tent set up for our next autoflower grow. I'm actually going to grow we just partnered up with Gorilla Grow Tent and Kind LED and Lotus Nutrients and a few others. And we're just basically going to see how big we can get them now because I've never really grown them in the tent. So I want to see how big I can get the autoflowers before they are done. And, I reached out to a couple other people that specialize in it. And then right here in Michigan, as during the mix, which is great about this industry, it's the best part I love, is the networking, the meeting the people, and sometimes just falling into somebody else. I hate to say it this way, but falling into somebody else's lap. I was in a forum talking to some people, or a Facebook group. I call it forum. I guess you can see where I'm dated there. But basically, we came across Utopia Essentials Nutrients, and they're out of Michigan here. And the guy is new and up and coming, and it's supposed to be like real great. I don't know all the details on it yet. We're still learning the product. We haven't even got it in our hands yet, but we're going to run that side by side with this and see how it goes. And we always support local. So, anybody that's local that wants us to try something out, we're not afraid to try it out. I'll tell you if I'm not educated or qualified enough in that. I'm a flower guy. I don't press dabs. I don't make concentrate. I've made RSO. I've made distillate. I've made stuff like that, using the Everclear and the Magic Butter machine. Do I know all the ins and outs of it? No. I'm a flower guy. At the end of the day, that's my thing, flower. I prefer flower, and I've tried dabs. It's too much for me. They say a dab will do you. Or for some of us, it will, because I don't need it. My flower is the way to go, and that's where I like to be. No, my brother, he's a dab guy. He's a distillate guy, and that's Squints on our show. He goes by Squints. That's my brother, and then our other co-host Twiggy. He was completely green, virgin to cannabis, basically, other than some edibles and smoking it a few times until he got with this. And then that's what I'm saying about the education and the re-educating part. We brought him on because we wanted somebody that didn't know nothing to kind of walk through the ranks of learning how to grow and produce a plant and a harvest. And he did. He scrogged out 3 plants in a 4x8 and grew some GG4 and produced it. And it had so much amber to it. It was ridiculous, and it turned out great. We got them as clones, but they were, I think, 2.5-foot clones, and he flowered them out and everything. And I taught him how to LST, and I taught him how to feed and how to scrog it, just from what I know. Was it all right? I don't know, but it turned out good. And it turned out so good that he's out almost because so many people loved smoking it. I mean that, and I don't do a lot of gifting or anything like that. I'm strictly for myself. And I know that sounds bad, but I'm not afraid to share with my friends if we're at an event or festival or something like that. But if you hit me up and said, "Hey, you got an ounce of this or that," I'm gonna be like, you know, I do, but it's not available. And it's not that I'm trying to be greedy. It's because at the end of the day, I don't want to run out and have to run down to the last place I want to go to purchase it and get it. Because I know where to get it around here, but I don't trust the streets, especially in this area, because you don't know what's in it. You just don't. And that's why I grow it myself, because I know, like I said, I know what I'm putting in my body. And with everything I've got, I don't want to take that chance. So I that's what I enjoy is the cultivation, definitely. I want to work in the field and I couldn't find an opportunity, so I kind of created my own with my own podcast show. But I'm hoping to continuously grow into the industry, and maybe I'll see whoever's out there listening at an event. We're going to be setting up tents. We work with HLG, so the last event we did was the Country Roots Get Down. We gave away an HLG Blackbird. I mean, we gave over $2,500 worth of stuff away in a package called the Ultimate Growers Package. And we actually were selling the tickets for a reasonable rate. And it was a raffle drawing. And a guy, he was in his late 60s and he was retired. And he was actually a retired grower. He said, I don't grow no more. He said, I'm done with it. I haven't done it in years, but I want to get back into it, especially after coming to this event. And he came and he bought 2 tickets. Day went on, it was hot, and everybody was enjoying the music. A couple hours later, he comes by and buys another one. And then he comes up for the 4th one right before I go up on the stage to draw it. I draw it, and this guy was tickled pink. I mean, he was so tickled, he asked me to carry all this. Obviously, I'm going to help him to his campsite. I get back to his campsite, and the guys basically wanted me to stay for dinner. I mean, he was like so happy. And it was a lot of older people, senior citizen related people. And I hate to say older, but that's basically the way to put it. And some of them were motorcyclists and veterans and stuff like that. And they were flabbergasted. This guy was showing the phenos off and showing the light off. And we work with a company called Fish Shit, and they're going to be they're looking to put their roots here in Michigan. I can't say too much yet, but I'll say that much. I know they're trying to put their roots here in Michigan. I know that for a fact. And you'll hear it first with us, definitely. And we'll be the first to let you guys know on all that. But definitely, they produce a product and it's been lab tested to improve your THC levels by up to 3%. And it's like a fish immersion, natural soil thing. And we use it with every feeding. And they gave away a huge bottle, and the stuff's not cheap, I'll be honest with you. And this guy was tickled pink, and the other guy's trying to buy it from him. It was a riot. He's like, "Man, I'll buy that from you right now." And he's like, "No, man, I'm trying to keep that." So we got to meet a lot of different people, and I've met poets at these events and that are into the cannabis, and I've met people that are veterans, and I've met people that are cancer patients, and it's just every week you kind of like you get to meet somebody that tells a different story. And that's the best part of it all for me, on top of the growing. I love cannabis. I love growing it. I don't think I'll ever stop. I've been doing it well before it was regulatedly legal, and I'll be the first to admit that. And I've actually been charged with it, I mean. And the crazy thing is when I got charged for it, it was 2 weeks before my medical card came in the mail. And I was on a date up at a tourist town. Some of you guys might know what it is, Silver Lake. I was up at the Sable Lighthouse on a date. And 3 days after my birthday, believe it or not, it was November 11th. I can't forget it because I'm born on election day. And it snows every year. Well, that year it didn't snow, and the beach, it was cold. There was snow blowing, but it wasn't on the ground. And I had my raw like I got here, like I always got, which matter of fact, I'm gonna spark it up if you don't mind. And um base zip was out of fluid. And I lit it, I smoked it, we passed it back and forth, and I flipped. Yeah, oh man, I littered. I don't do it now. I kind of got against it now more because I'm more for the earth and how everything's are. I'm not like earthy, but I'm trying not to litter. And I flicked it out the window and watched it blow across the beach. I'm guilty. I'll admit. Well, the parking lot's empty. We're not doing anything. We're not doing any funky business, nothing like the cops thought we were. And he's sitting back in the corner of the driveway watching us the whole time. Didn't approach me until it was gone and blew away. Well, comes up to the car, shines his light in my face. And I'm like, roll my window down. Now I'm blitzed. I ain't gonna lie. And he's like, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, I'm on a date, enjoying my birthday. What's it look like? And he's like, you do realize that's illegal? I said, well, you do realize I'm parked. And I didn't know that because I just got my card. I didn't study all the laws yet. And I'm like, I just got my card. I got the paperwork in the glove box. I don't got it yet. He's like, let me see it. And shows it, comes back, blah, blah, blah. And tells me, okay, we got you down for court. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the ticket with the court date. You got to show up. Okay. Call your parents. Mind you, I'm in my 30s or late 20s. And call your parents. Come pick you up. Mind you, I'm like an hour and a half from home. And so I call my grandparents. They're not pissed. They'd rather me call them. I mean, and they get up there. It's like 4 a.m. And they have to drive me, my car, and my date home on top of following me. I'm in my 30s. But during the time he busts us, I didn't get to the good part yet. The good part is I had a WD-40. You ever see them WD-40 stash cans? I had one of them. And people were like, oh, that don't work. That ain't going to work. I had 2 ounces in that thing. Cop picked it up, looked at it, shaked it, heard the ball rattle, threw it off to the side. My heart's in my throat. And I got away with it. They took my grinder. I had a big grinder. They took my papers. They took nothing but some seeds in the bottom of the grinder and a little bit of keef. Charged me with it. I go to court, and the judge says, well, you're going to come back in a couple of weeks. Didn't do nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is weird. It was a pretrial. Then I go to the sentencing, and he's like, oh, it's rescheduled. And I'm like, okay. Mind you, I hired a lawyer because I never knew what I was doing, And my lawyer charges me an extra $350 every time we have court because it's in a different county. And and finally we get through it. I spent about $5,000 on my lawyer, and they booked me in. I go to the jail. They put me in jail. They book me in, and they book me right back out. Literally book in and book out. And I'm sitting there for like 2 hours, just sitting there talking to the police officer. And he's like, well, you're going to go over to the probation office next. And I'm like, oh, okay. And you're going to be, and I'm like, this ain't my first rodeo. I was a troubled kid. I'll admit it. So I'm not scared. And he's like, okay. He's like, all right. So I go over there, and I get signed up, and I do the probation. I was supposed to do 14 months. And this was right when my grandma was going in the hospital and everything with her open heart surgery. And I was down to my last 3 months, and my grandma passed, and they let me off. But the whole time they canceled everything, wiped it away. They said, you got enough on your plate. We ain't even going to charge you with this. We're just going to expunge it, pay you $500, do what you got to do. So they did. And I was grateful. But during the whole time I was on probation, up until they dropped me off it a month before my last drop. They didn't drop me the whole time until like the last one. And I dropped dirty. Then they made me go to jail for a night. Well, then they brought me back to the jail and they say to me, we mischarged you. We're gonna give you your money back for the jail, and we're sorry for this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, we didn't realize you had your medical card. So now you're allowed the whole time to smoke while you're on probation because you have your medical card. But we're gonna drop you for anything else in your system. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, but okay. And this was before like cannabis got like real mainstream to the point that, you know, the states might have developed a program because they didn't have a program. So they made me pay the fines and the fees and enroll myself in AA for alcohol. So I show up. It's in the basement of this coffee shop. And I'm like, oh, okay. The guy shows up. I'm the only guy there the whole day. And the guy's talking to me about alcohol and how it impairs you and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, dude, you do realize this is nothing like cannabis. I'm like, it's similar in some steps, but it doesn't relate. And I'm not here for drinking and driving. Like, I'm here because I got caught after I smoked a joint. And the guy was more worried about me just paying him. I think the class cost me like $400 for the day. And they didn't even give me lunch. Like, that was the question I asked them. I said, well, is lunch included? No, you got to pay for that yourself. And I'm like, really? Oh, okay, well. And then they give you a certificate. Well, I did everything, and I did it so quick and early, like right after I got sentenced. I enrolled in everything. The judge thought I was going to wait around. So that, I think that on top of my grandmother dying, they kind of ruled it out and just kind of said, you know, you did good. You give us some more money and we'll let you go. And that was my story with my charge on cannabis. Not saying that was bad or I had pounds on top of pounds, but that was kind of how I got exposed when I got the card to, hey, you know, like, is it really as bad as these people make it out to be, or am I just thinking it is? And it was more I was thinking it is. And that's when I started, you know, like connecting with other people and realized it wasn't that bad. So definitely.
So I guess next I want to kind of address or talk about something that you said earlier on that I think myself and everybody else will find to be true. And I can't figure out why, but I almost think it's a blessing, to be honest with you. When you make that switch into cannabis, or you've kind of, you know, you become that activist, it does kind of separate the people that are in your life at that time.
Definitely, definitely. And
Oh,
go ahead.
you know, oh no, you're the guest. You first.
And the way you're asking that, I want to answer it with kind of a story / answer. After my grandfather passed, my family knew kind of that they knew I had my card. My mother, my uncles, the siblings of my grandfather, and they knew we did it. They knew that he helped me grow it, but they thought, you know, oh, maybe it's a plant or two. So they come over, and mind you, I had the garage full at that time because I just got our last harvest up, and we were still in the middle of harvesting. And they opened the garage door because they're going to get ready to start liquidating the stuff and selling it right there. And they opened the door and they're like, holy shit, that fucking stinks. We didn't realize you did it on that kind of caliber. And I'm like, yeah. Yep, I do. Well, and then they're like, well, as long as you got it done before we sell the house, blah. This was after they gave me the eviction notice. We ain't worried about it. So I went without work for like 2 weeks. I was the only one in my garage. I locked the doors. I had a little light. I was basically being a prisoner in my own house. It felt like I was hiding from people. And I trimmed it all up over 2 weeks, round the clock, and got it all bucketed up. I had I didn't weigh it. I want to say I had 8 5-gallon buckets full, which is pretty good for somebody, personal. And I did all that, and like you said, losing people and stuff like that. Well, after my grandfather died, when he died, because he was diabetic and the way I found him and stuff, he had a lot of bruises on his stomach from missing with a needle or whatever, blowing a blood vessel or whatever. They thought that I abused him. No bullshit. The state police did. And they had to investigate right then and there. So because he was not a diabetic and they believed that, they made me sit there with the police and they counted all his narcotics. I call it narcotics, but prescriptions, whatever you want to call it. And he was on a lot. And I think the man took 30 some odd pills a day. And yeah, and we were trying to break away from that, with cannabis and stuff like that. And the state police ruled it out that it wasn't foul play, but they had to know that I had my marijuana grow going in the basement. They had to, because they inspected the whole house. So I was blunt about it. I had my medical card and I was within limit. And he opens the door to the thing and he says, my parents are standing behind him. And he says, holy fuck. The cop says this. And he says, that shit stinks. He says, you know what the hell you're doing. I said, I don't know if I know what I'm doing, but I said, I know it stinks. I said, it's some good genetics. And he zips it back up. He looks in my card over. He looks everything up on his little laptop tablet thing he had. And he says, you're legal. He says, there's nothing I can do. He said, have a nice day. And my parents looked at him and they said, because I think they expected them to take it and kind of get rid of it because they didn't like it, even though they did it. My mom grew up with her ex-husband when we were kids, which I thought was my dad as a kid. Come to find out it wasn't. My dad was incarcerated for 35 years. He's an alcoholic. I don't touch alcohol, period. And well, long story short, they basically wanted me to do away with it. It was more my uncle than my mother. Well, and so I got rid of it, and I lost some family members over the mix, because they didn't like it. But here's where the twist comes that makes it real funny. So I dry everything. Knock on wood, they can't come back after me. It's in the past. I dried everything in a 10 by 10 storage unit. And I used USB fans, and half my crop went to fucking bud rot. I couldn't control it. And it sucked. It did. And well, I decide I'm still living in my house. I'm about ready to be fully moved out. I got everything almost in the storage. And they didn't know I wasn't going to be at work that day because I make my own schedule. I work for myself. That's why I'm allowed to do what I can do. And long story short, I came home early that day. Well, I catch my aunt and my uncle on the back porch smoking a joint. Yep. Hypocritical. But yeah, I caught you in the act. They put that fucker out and tried to hide it so damn fast, like I didn't know what the hell they were doing. I just didn't say nothing. I just kept to myself and laughed my ass off. Then, next thing you know, because he runs a food business, I won't say what, but he runs a food business and catering. A dispensary, a small town dispensary. I call it a small town because it's just like a little mom and pop dispensary. It's not mainstream. They don't advertise. They don't do anything. It goes into an old gas station. And he starts food vending in the parking lot. And I'm like, but yet you're against it. Well, then I started watching and they're looking to where they can get their supply. And I'm like, this guy was just trying to cause trouble for me. But at the same sense, yeah, I lost I lost people over it. I lost family members because they exposed it. We get to the funeral and they're starting to tell people are that grew up against it. It was bad. The people that are in their 80s and 90s and late 70s that are in my family that respected me as a little kid and respected me. I respected them growing up. Yeah, they were opposed by it. And some of them, they're still opposed by it with it being legal. They're like, that doesn't mean it's okay. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. This is who I am, and I'm not going to change it, and this and that. And, I've gotten offered jobs to the point that I've had to choose my cannabis pain management over a job. And it's just the way it goes. I mean, that's why I work for myself when I do what I do. I mean, I I have a CDLA. I can go back to truck driving. I actually got offered by, I'm not going to say the name because we had a falling out, but one of the biggest grow supply companies in the state of Michigan. They wanted me to do dedicated soil runs to North Carolina, but they didn't want to pay for me to relocate to where they're at on the east side of the state. So they expected me to do the 3 hour drive to work every day on top of working the whole day. And it didn't work out. So yeah, but yeah, when I drove commercial vehicle, I didn't smoke at all. And people were like, you can quit just like that. I can quit just like turning a light switch off. I have the motivation. I was a cigarette smoker. I started when I was 14. I worked my way up to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I was a chain smoker. You get down to half a cigarette and I'd put another one in my mouth. Um, and I quit about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, cold turkey. I used Jolly Ranchers when I had an urge and ink pens between my fingers to feel like I had something to flick. And that's how I did it. I'm actually allergic to the glue that they use on the nicotine patches. So I can't have that. And then I'm also allergic to Camel cigarettes, which I found out as a smoker because the glue they use to attach the butt to the tobacco, I'm allergic to that adhesive. And it causes my lips to swell up looking like Donald Duck. It's crazy. And I, I'm allergic to nicotine too. I break out into hives and can't breathe for the consumption. So yeah, I know it's crazy with the name Organically Blunt, but it's because of who I am, not because I've smoked blunts. Hearsay, I do enjoy them. I've smoked a lot of them. They just make my hair fall out. And long story short, they don't have enough nicotine in the paper once you break it down to do a whole lot of damage to me. But yeah, I mean, I uh I how do I word it here? Basically, I'm allergic to that, and then the consumption of nicotine and everything, it kind of got me away from it. My body changed. It changes so much that it's crazy. Some of the things that I become allergic to. And like I said, I'm allergic to that. I'm allergic to hot dogs. I'm not supposed to eat hot dogs. I love hot dogs. We did a charitable event last year and I ate 14 hot dogs and I paid for it. I mean, there's a preservative in hot dogs and Polish sausage that I haven't pinpointed down to what one that causes extreme headaches in me to the point it triggers my headaches. Yeah. And it's just another thing I have to stay away from. So I have to eat turkey ones or non-GMO, non-vegan, the diet they want you to go on with this disease is basically a seed and berry diet. They basically want you to cut everything out for 3 months and then go back and reintroduce things one by one until you find your triggers, kind of like an allergic testing. And I love food too much. I can't do it. So I'll live with it. I but cannabis in a sense it kind of suppresses my immune system. For a lot of other people, it opens it up. It makes you more vulnerable. But for me, some not necessarily all the way, but in some senses, people say when you smoke something, it opens up your immune system a little bit to where you can get sick a little bit easier. But for me, I feel like it protects me, and I honestly do because I don't get sick a lot like I used to. And knock on wood, I I'm grateful because uh, I use cannabis on a daily basis. I mean, and maybe I am still considered a chain smoker with the way I smoke cannabis because I kind of do smoke it about as much as I did cigarettes. I'll be honest, but it's how I deal with my pain on a daily basis, and that's what I have my medical card for. Mostly is for the pain and the nausea. I mean, I was using, as crazy as it sounds, yogurt is a natural thing for when you get an upset stomach, plain Greek yogurt, and I was using that, but it wasn't working enough. Cannabis made it so I could actually gain weight and have an appetite too, because I've always been super skinny to the point. I mean, I was a wrestler in high school, and I wrestled 101 to 103, and then finally I was so good at it because I'm skinny and flexible. Well, I was. Um, I was three-time state champion for my weight class up until my senior year when I just dipped off. But I was flexible, but I couldn't gain weight. But I was wrestling. I weighed 103 pounds soaking wet, and I was wrestling kids that weighed 15, 20 pounds more than me and dominating them. And that's what I did in high school. I didn't play sports because I wasn't able to basically be coordinated enough. I can't sing, I can't do music, I can't do sports, but that was the one thing I shined in. And that kind of, I was using cannabis back then a little bit too. I mean, here and there, but it was more or less uh, at the wrestling get together parties, we'd call them, where a group of us guys would get together and after a match or a meet, and we'd smoke a joint at the football game. We wouldn't necessarily go to each other's house. The football games on Friday night in our town was like the highlight. Like everybody went to that, and usually you could trade cannabis with people. Somebody would have something. I haven't got a chance to try a lot of the older strains, but a lot of the people had like the AK-47s, the Girl Scout cookies, and GG4 wasn't really a thing or anything back then. Girl Scout cookies was new. We would try. I think somebody had something called a Fruity Pebbles or something like that back then, and it was great. We tried different things, but from my town, in order to get it, you had to know somebody that would be willing to drive almost an hour to go to the town where you could get it, because that's why it was great when we started growing it. Exactly, because I didn't know where to get it. And I was like, well, okay, I can ask this person. Well, and then like I said, my buddy from California, he really introduced me into like the higher quality and the strains and got me into it more because I was smoking what they call Reggies, whatever you call it. I mean, the bags we were getting, we were paying 25 for a quarter, 50 for a half, 100 for an ounce. And I'm smoking it and thinking it's the greatest, And then my buddy from California, he brings some loud stuff and he's like, try this. And I'm trying it and I smoke it. And I literally went back to my Reggies for a minute and I'm like, I hit it. And it was like I had tobacco in my mouth. It was that almost like having an ashtray in my mouth. It was that nasty tasting. And I was like, holy shit, I'm never going back to that crap again. And he's like, well, I brought this from California. I don't know where you're going to find any of this like this out here. And I'm like, me neither. Well, so happened I got across a couple seeds and that's where we started growing for ourselves really right there. And we started growing them in the closet and here and there, but they were nothing huge. We'd get a couple ounces, but it worked for us, definitely. But yeah, we've lost I've lost some people along the way, mostly family members and a couple good friends, one of my own brothers don't even talk to me really because, he got married and they don't support that. That was illegal all growing up and that was wrong and you weren't supposed to do it. And it would fry your brain cells and everything else you ever heard, the whole dare from the 90s, 80s and 90s, that whole spiel, he was basically lived by it. Even and once they really seen that I got into it, they kind of into smoking it more than just one once a month. They were like, well, we can't be around you no more. And it's like, well, okay, I guess. But now it's kind of like they're coming around again, but it's not the same vibe that it was when we were kids because we haven't been around each other in so many years that it's like, how do you act, Because am I going to offend you if I spark up or are you cool with it? And if I talk about it, are you going to leave the room? I mean, that's kind of how it was for me, losing somebody that respected me for who I was in a sense. But I think it's becoming more socially acceptable on a lot of points at least in my surroundings. My parents aren't opposed to it no more. My uncle got caught smoking it. I mean, and I've smoked with pretty much everybody in my family at one point or every time. And as crazy as it sounds, and uh, everything from, you know, my cousins to my brothers got different parents. They're not full-blooded brothers. They're my grandma kind of adopted the brother that don't talk to me, and he lived a troubled life, and we grew up in the same household. We were best friends, and we just kind of became brothers because he had 8 brothers, and there was too many people in the house. And but yeah, I mean, so now all of them have smoked with me at one point in time. Everything from the mom, the dad, the brothers, the uncles, the aunts. I mean, I supplied the whole family reunion one year. I mean, so I think people are starting to become around on it. A lot of people that I don't necessarily think they were opposed to it. I think they were just afraid to let people know they smoke. I think it's more or consume. I think it was more or less, oh, if they find out, they're gonna look at me different, and it's not necessarily that. As long as they don't change the person you are as a whole, I mean, I don't see why it's a problem. I really don't.
It's a weird thing, from on my side of that thing, and my side of that, I can't necessarily figure out um if it's they just don't like cannabis or they don't like, them you succeeding in something that you love to do when they have to go to their 9 to 5s and not be
Right.
so happy. I don't know. I can't tell if it's the cannabis themselves or that we're happy, you know, living a life that, isn't so fruitful, but we're still happy. You know what I mean? We find the payment or the impact and gratefulness in
Definitely.
most cases.
Definitely.
And people can't understand that. Most people can't understand that. They can't wrap their mind around it. They're like, how much money are you making? Well, it's not about that really.
No,
It's
exactly.
it's
Yep.
about the impact, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I find more of the confused looks in that than I do anything else. But I can't figure out necessarily why that divide is. The only the only sunny part of that is that I found so many great people. Yeah, I've left a
Yes.
lot of people behind, but I've met so many great people in the cannabis community. It's been kind of a good trade-off, to be honest
Definitely.
with you.
Definitely. I mean, and what I do in a sense is logistics, to put it points blank. I'm basically in logistics and I do delivery. And long story short, you know, I, I went to deliver a package the other day and I'm not going to say the name or who he was because I promised I wouldn't. Another guy that runs a podcast, a big one in the cannabis industry. And they run a whole show series. And I delivered to his house and he's like, oh man. And it was, all I can tell you is it's on Lake Michigan. That's all I'm going to say. And I roll up and I'm like, man. And he comes out and he's smoking a joint and he's got his shirt on from the podcast. And I'm like, oh, dude, I know who you are. And he's like, yeah, don't say nothing to where I live or don't tell people. And I'm like, I won't, bro. I promise you that. But I'm like, you're living where I want to be. I said, I'm a water baby in a sense, even though I'm not, I am. I got to be by the water. And it kind of grounds me. That's why I love it here in Michigan. And long story short, I'm like, my goal is to be where you are. Tell me what I got to do to get there because you inspire me, and we still talk, like he inspires me. We don't talk a lot, but we talk here and there because the guy inspires me, with what he does. And I'm like, you guys are basically part of the whole reason I got involved in this. And was because I came across their show and another grower, which is, he doesn't do a whole lot. He tends to go limbo, especially in the YouTube market, to where he'll do a bunch of episodes and grows, and then he'll disappear for a year, and then he'll come back. And it's like, man, where'd you go? Like, what happened? And but between them two growers, they taught me a lot. And then, just meeting the people as they go. That, like when we were doing outdoor, I came across Mendo Dope way before I met them at Big Cloud, way before I had them on the podcast. I bought their DVD, their first DVD, and because I wanted to learn how to grow and what I need to put in the soil, because their hashtag is growers, planter of the trees. And I'm like, well, I want to grow trees too, so I was addicted to it at that point, to the point that I was addicted to the growing side of things. Like I wanted to grow something impressive. And something happened and I couldn't get their DVD because I needed it put on a regular disc and they only offered it on Blu-ray. And I didn't have a Blu-ray player. And they were supposed to ship it out and they got busy. They got on tour and we were talking on Instagram. And next thing you know, he's like, man, I'm just going to give you your money back. And I'm like, no, man. I'm like, I want to know that information. Like, teach me. Like, so they started teaching me and they felt guilty. So they shipped me a hat in the mail, and that was cool. But I was like, you didn't have to do that. I just was trying to pick your guys' brain and like trying to learn what I need to put in my soil. And that's where our relationship, and it boils down, it trickles out to other people along the way that we've met. And like I said, I met you at Big Cloud. We were lost. We didn't even know where we were going. And I just so happened to see you carrying your equipment. And I'm like, well, this guy's media. I'm like, this guy's got to know where we got to go. And you kind of pointed us in the right direction. But I'll be honest, that event must have been pretty new for them in the media because, like Rick said, he said, nobody knew where you had to go or what you had to do. And I'm like, well, we're just going to hang out and figure it out. And it worked out. But now we're getting more comfortable. And like I told him, we want to actually get involved and interview some of the people that perform and stuff like that. We ourselves as a podcast have ran across in the industry that a lot of people are still kind of sheltered on getting on the mic, getting on a show. They no, that ain't for me. No, I don't want people to know who I am. Even though they know who their brand and their product and they don't want to be in the limelight of the camera or on the microphone. And that was one of the things we've been running into. One of our issues is, we go to these events and we'll walk around with a mobile mic and people, no, I don't want to be on. No, thank you. And it's like, don't you want to promote your brand and let people know who you are and what your craft is? And we're not asking for anything from you. We're not trying to sell you nothing or anything. But I think it boils down to, in this industry, you kind of not only got to make a name for yourself, but you also got to make sure the people that are surrounded around you are comfortable. And sometimes that takes people a couple of times. I've noticed a couple of events before they actually come up and talk to you. The last event we did, we had so many people coming up and talking to us and saying they've seen us before. And we were like blown away because we've always been the one to go to the booths, never to have one of our own. So it was a different atmosphere for us, but we're learning that it's a very tight niche community, and it's a lot smaller than what you think. Kind of like the automotive industry that I was involved in. It's a lot smaller than people think it is once you start getting to know people. And I've learned things, I've learned, what brands, not saying any in particular, but what brands don't really support the growers and which ones do, and which ones are trying to take away our rights. Yeah, they want you to have it like Walmart, Meyer, or whatever you call it, and go to the dispo, or basically eventually go to the store and be able to buy it. And it's gonna have your different qualities like anything else. Like I've been trying to explain to my brother, because he's been trying to hear my theory on this. And it's basically, it boils down to, it's like, okay, you can go and get a fountain pop, you can go get a Coke, or you can go get some Jack Daniels or something, some top shelf something. If you put it in liquor, or however you want to put it, you could go with, like, I don't know, if you were to do liquor or something, crappy vodka, mid-shelf vodka, and vodka that's high shelf made with grapes. Well, kind of same thing with cannabis. Like I explained to him, you're going to have your gas stations. They're going to have basically your concessions, your fountain pop of cannabis when it is available the way they want it to be. And then you're going to have the next level where it might be at your mom and pop dispo might have something that's mediocre. And then you're going to have somebody that's just going to have the high dollar, high quality stuff. That's what they want. So they don't want you to be able to grow it because it competes against them. And we don't want that. We want it to where we are allowed to grow it too, because you should have the right. You should not be able to go to Myers just to get your tomatoes. You should be able to grow them in your backyard. And that's how my grandpa was. He felt, we can do this ourselves. Why do we got to spend money on it? So that's when we decided we're more for, because when we originally started our show, and a lot of people looked at me like this, I wanted to cover both aspects of the industry, the corporate side and the growing side. I didn't want anybody against anybody. I just wanted to show the whole thing as a whole. Well, we got a lot of flack when we started showing the corporate stuff because a lot of people didn't like it. And we didn't know, we were new. And that's the same thing with the event we pulled out of. Now we're trying to get involved more with the grower side of things. I've even blocked people that, tried warning me and telling me because I didn't want to hear it, but they were trying to put me on blast at the same time. And it's like, I don't want to deal with this drama of having to continuously explain myself to people that, yes, they matter, but I was doing it to try to show it as a whole. And I wasn't out to harm anybody or say I'm off for corporate or I'm off for grow, which I am, but I'm off for growers, not corporate. But I was just trying to show both sides of the coin, I guess you'd say. And I caught some flack for it. I always owe up to my flaws and my mistakes. And, if anybody was to mention that, we would mention, we did sign on with an event and we promoted it and we were going to get involved. And once we found out, we really couldn't be the growers we wanted to be and express ourselves the way we wanted, we didn't go. So then we got involved with more of the grower market events. And, if anybody wants us to come up to an event, we're not opposed to it. Like we said, we want to meet more people. We want to We want to network. We want to build our network of people, you know, where if, just for example, let's say your buddy Timmy hits us up and says, "Hey man, I'm looking for some good genetics. Where do you go?" I can give him a list of places on top of a way to save money, some kind of coupon code or something. Now he's going to remember us for that. And we basically helped him out with that. He's not growing a bag seed that he don't know what it is. He's not going to Joe Bob the neighbor that grows his own that says, "Hey, these are White Widow," when it might be a skunk seed and you don't even know it. You don't know what you're getting. And same thing with anything else. We want to, at the end of the day, we want to build a network of people we trust. So that way, if somebody needs something, we know who to go to. We don't have to play a guessing game. If you need soil, you know where to go. You need a good light, you know where to go. You need a grow tent, you know where to go. You need RSO, you know who makes it. You need good flour, you know who grows it. You need dabs, you know who has it. Just, for example, anything you need. And not necessarily pushing sales of that stuff, but if somebody needs it for medicine or needs it to grow, they know where to go to talk to get on the right path to getting the solution they need. And that's basically how my love for this is basically the re-educating and connecting other people with the people they need to be connected to. And building trust is the biggest thing with us. Anything we vouch for, we have to try it. We have to try it. We have to know how it works. We have to know how it grows. We have to try it firsthand. Anything, you know, if we haven't tried it, we ain't gonna vouch for it. I've actually had a company, and I will say the name just because I know a lot of people know it. They reached out to us, and because they wouldn't provide product for us to try, and they wanted us to do an ad and a whole episode where they talked about it, but they wouldn't give us anything to try. I had to regretfully decline. I mean, because if I can't try something, I can't say that it works good. And that was Heavy 16. I don't know if you're familiar with the product or not. And we've met a lot of different people along this industry, and you included. I mean, one of these days we're going to have to hear your story. I think we need to bring you on our podcast and hear what you have to say.
Oh, like lots of people like to hear that story for sure.
Oh, definitely.
I try to sit on it as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think people don't quite understand that as you're trying to feel your way out through the podcast,
Yep.
adventure. You're not necessarily, when you talk about the industry and the home grower, you're just trying to, in some cases, just show what's out there. You're not necessarily in support of, you know
Right.
what I mean? That's
Yep.
for them to judge. And
Exactly.
so I think I've seen the same thing, to be honest with you,
Yep.
and take a little heat for that. But it's, you got to expose it for what it is. We talk
Yeah,
about
definitely.
that there is a huge line between industry and community, and most of what I find that the community or the industry are the people that are financially invested in cannabis, not
Yep.
necessarily consumers. It's
Yep.
all about the dollar,
I've
and that is.
actually delivered to a the owner of in Muskegon. He is the first micro what do they call it? Micro license dispensary. The first one in this area. And he's self-funded and everything, and they're like blown away. And so I had to do a delivery to this guy. And I met him, and I'm texting him because I have to communicate to let him know where his package is and stuff like that. And me being smart networking, I slipped a business card in there. Well, the guy texts me, and I straight up asked him, like, do you guys grow it yourself? Do you know anything about it? The guy don't grow it himself. No, he has people that do it. He hires people, and I'm like, I can't respect you. I was like, it's cool. You're the first micro license in our city, and I really wanted to put you on the podcast to talk about that, but I can't now because like you're truly not a real grower. You're just an investor, a financer, and I respect your hustle and I respect what you do for a living, but you don't fit our niche of people that listen. Sorry. So yeah, definitely. It's been interesting to run into people just on a daily basis, You see people on shows like we're on right now, and you're like, oh, I'll never run into them people. And then all of a sudden you're out and about and you see them and you're like, is that? Wow, it is. Oh, they do exist. Yeah. So it's been interesting, definitely. It's been, and I don't want to just keep trying to promote my own show or anything here. That's not about that, but since we started our show as soon as I moved into my house, I knew I was going to make a room a dedicated studio. And I'm building it and putting sound deadening up, and it's getting better and better as we go. But and I think we're up to 15 or 16 episodes now, and so it's been a few months. We try to get one out every week. It's been hard because we all work full time and making the schedule work sometimes and stuff like that. It's been real difficult, and I haven't done any video. This is my first video, honestly, because since I've developed alopecia, I've been self-conscious to get on the camera. And it's we want to expand in it. And I'm thinking maybe I can run this camera that you see me on while we're doing our podcast and run it on the YouTube or the Instagram. Just to kind of let people interact with us too. We want to bring that in too, definitely. But it's took me a bit to get used to being on the camera for sure. I'm usually the guy behind the camera.
Well, I'm glad you kind of overcame that and come hang out tonight.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
don't be apologetic for, self-plugging the show. I know who I was. I knew who I was, inviting when I threw the invite out. You know what I mean?
Definitely,
I
definitely.
believe I'm pulling others along with me. You
Yes.
know what I
Yep, yep.
mean?
Definitely.
That's the way it should work. So don't be
Yep.
apologetic for,
Yep.
throwing out the name of the show there. You can't cover all the bases, and I'm
Right.
glad there's other people out there doing similar projects. So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and we've met a few other shows along the way, and everybody's got their own unique, I guess you'd say, direction on where they take their show. I mean, there's one about cannabis and shoes. I mean, if you like shoes and you like cannabis, it's for you, man. I mean, no power to you. And we've met different people, that along the way that I just can't believe we met. We met people that have clothing lines, we've met artists, we've met glass companies, which I can tell you, I have yet to get a glass company on the microphone. So if there's any out there listening, please, I hate to plug myself again, but please reach out to us because we would love to promote some glass. Like, and none of them want to get on the mic. They all say it's not for them. So it's like, well, I can relate because blown glass, you're kind of secluded. You probably don't want to deal with people. I'm the same way. That's why I went into truck driving, is because I'm by myself. I don't have to deal with coworker drama. There's no he said, she said. If something goes wrong, the only person you have to blame is yourself. And it makes it great for me. Plus, I can start when I want and I can end when I want. So I kind of like that. But there's flaws to being working for yourself, like I tell people too. I pay out in taxes what some people would pay a week, what some people make, and it sucks because you're paying $300-400 a week in taxes out, but I pay my taxes differently than other people. So that work a standard job, being a 1099, which other 1099s can relate. It's a lot more, just because you have savings account doesn't mean the money's yours. Uncle Sam wants his cut, and it's great. But the good thing is I get to see a lot. I get to meet a lot of people that way too. I do 6,000 miles a month.
That's a bit.
So I do roughly 2,500 miles to 3,000 miles every 2 weeks. Yep. So and then because I was a mechanic, I do an oil change on my car every 2 weeks. And so it sucks. Some people are like, your oil's not even broken. No, but I just idled for 120 hours over them 2 weeks. And that breaks your oil down too. And people don't know that, that's just another tidbit of information off track there. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's fun, I've considered actually getting into cannabis delivery too, but I don't know if I want to pick up on that avenue, because in the city I'm in, not only is it corporatized, but who's to say you ain't gonna get robbed when you pull up? I mean, I'm not gonna carry a gun. I hate to put it that way, because I have my medical license. They tend to not like you to have both. I've heard of people having it and getting away with it, but if you get busted, I heard it's not good. I don't know if the laws have changed. Maybe someone can inform me on that, but I know if you have one, you can't have the other usually. And
well, you can.
Okay.
You can't have them both together. So
Right,
you're
right.
either carrying your pistol or you're carrying your cannabis, which is fucking stupid. Because
yeah. And that's what I'm getting at is, and if I'm delivering cannabis, they're not going to want me to have the pistol on me. So it's like, well, that's not going to work for me, because I got to protect myself, and definitely, I mean, so I carry pepper spray. I mean, it works. I've used it once this year already, believe it or not, crazy as it sounds. Yep. The guy could not drive home. There was a road rage incident about 3 weeks ago. Yep. He cut me off, and he had some novelty light in the back of his truck. And when he hit the brakes, it flipped you off. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like 2 car lengths behind him. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's funny. He's flipping me off. So I back off some more because I don't know the situation. Well, we get to the stoplight. Mind you, it's a block from the police station, literally a block. And the guy all of a sudden just shoots over into the right lane so he can get beside me. So I pull up, merge up to the car in front of me at the stoplight. And I got my windows down because it's hot, obviously. And the guy is in the lane, pulls in the lane next to me and kind of blocks me so I can't go nowhere. Like kind of kitty corners the front of his truck like this in front of my car and gets out. Sticks his head in the window. Mind you, I already was prepared and had my pepper spray on my lap and armed to press the trigger when he got in the other lane. I reached for it. And he stuck his head in my window and tried to grab at me. And I let it happen right in his face. He got out of my car quick, jumped in his truck, started to drive for about 5 seconds, and it must have finally hit. He threw it in park like he hit a brick wall and threw his hands up. That's what I did. I drove home like nothing even happened. I know it's ruthless, but at the end of the day, I feel like I protected myself and I did the right thing, and I feel, what would somebody do if they had a gun in that situation? They pulled the trigger. You could have got charged with murder, even though they were trying to attack you. So it was a little bit safer that way for me, so that's how I see it, definitely. But it's been crazy. I don't know. I don't know really what else to talk about here, but if you have any questions before you let me go here.
I kind of want to address a little something that you said earlier about like mids,
Yeah.
or buying. I had this conversation in my local Walmart, by the way. I talk a lot of cannabis at Walmart.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know why, but it just
Definitely.
happened. Um, so I'm talking to a father and son, and we're talking dispos. We're talking about getting, cannabis from dispos.
Yep.
And both of them agreed. They're like, I just can't get high off that shit. It looks good, it smells good, but it doesn't have the impact that, the shit we grow at home does. And I
Right.
says, it's relating back to what you said earlier, they do take in your energy, and I think when
Yeah.
it's being produced by like the gentleman that you said earlier that doesn't grow their own cannabis, or it's
Yep.
just production, that's what you get. It looks nice, it smells nice, but it doesn't have a heart, it doesn't have a soul, it
Definitely.
doesn't have the
Yep.
love that we put into it you
Exactly.
know
It, it
I
it's a lot of nurturing that people don't realize. It's almost like taking care of a pet or a kid for me, you know. I'm not sad when I cut it down like I'm losing an animal or a loved one. I'm quite happy, though, to be honest. But I mean, at the same sense, it is kind of sad a little bit because you're like, man, I just spent all my time growing it. Now it's over. But the nice thing is about growing is you can start right back over. I like to get right back into it. Like if I know I'm going to harvest, because I don't have a lot of room where I live, because I live in the city and now I'm stuck to indoor mostly. I do have some indoor, outdoor uh, ones that I worked in to my patio and stuff like that. And I live in a pretty secure neighborhood. Everybody knows what I do. And I contacted my housing association that I live in here and let them know that, hey, I got my medical card. They took a copy of it. They know. They said, as long as you have it on camera, because if somebody steals it, you can legally prosecute. And I'm like, yeah, I know this. And, but I went with the freak shows because I didn't want to attract too much attention. I don't know if you've ever seen that strain yet or not. It grows like a fern. It looks like a fern. The leaves come out and they look like a fern. And it's pretty neat. It's from Humboldt Seed Company. We work with them a little bit here and there, and I wanted something discreet that I could grow out on my patio or on a balcony, and people just think it's an ornamental fern of some sort, and that's what made it great. But um, and with the indoor and the grow and everything, it you get to spend a little more time with it, and I so when I get close to harvest, I usually pop a couple for the next run. So that way, as soon as they're ready to be pulled out, I have something else going back in. So that way, I'm not bored. I hate to put it that way. It gives me something to do on the daily basis. And like when I get off the mic here, I got to go check on the babies. They sprouted. We put them in last night in the new tent setup. You can check it out on our Instagram, and they're already sprouted. I mean, I I I germed them for 2 days on the wet. I use the wet napkin trick. I always have. It just works for me almost 100% of the time. And they I went away for a day, and I come back, and these things are already the tap roots are already growing into the paper of the napkins. And I'm like, wow, oh, okay. It's only been 48 hours. I've had them, I've had them pop as quick as 18 hours. Some good genetics. And I, uh, I got them in the soil last night, around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and they're already mini, but they're mini sprouts. I mean, already in the 3 gallon grow bags that we have them in. And we're just doing six simple right now. And so that way we can kind of move around the tent, and I want to see how big I can get them. Most people, when you hear them growing or pheno hunting, they're doing like 36, 96 plus seeds. I don't have the room for that, and nor do I have the time for that. So I do a few, and I decided, hey, I'm going to do an autos, get a quick turnaround before I run out of my medicine from the last harvest. And then I'm going to go into the FEMs, where we got a lot of cool different genetics. Some of them are local people that want us to try them. And we're excited, definitely, because one of them's actually like a grow off pack. Like they want you to report how it does, and you can win something. I don't know what, but I'm not really worried about winning anything. I'm just more or less want to show them what we can do. And if somebody says, "Hey, that works," what's that? Definitely. And yeah, definitely. I mean, because we just upgraded our tent to they finally came out with a AC Infinity, came out with a Wi-Fi controller now. So now I'm able to control my intake and my exhaust and my circulation fans and my light and all that from afar. And I can know what's going on while I'm out on the road. And if I got to make some adjustments, if it gets too hot in there, I can crank the tent, the fan up and extract some of the air out. If the humidity is too much in there and I need to move some air around, I can upgrade the speed. It's great. You can only control four products at a time, but if you got one light, an intake, and an exhaust, and a circulation fan on a small tent, you're pretty much set. I mean, it pretty much does what it needs to do. And that, unfortunately, with this new setup we're going, I'm actually introducing a whole nother spectrum of light on top of the full spectrum. When the new light we got has UVB and it has infrared too. So it's learning that, and I'm going to walk the percentage up as the plant grows out. About the second week of flower, so we'll introduce it at about 25% until we max it out before harvest at 100%. We're learning all these products as we go. I like I said, I started with a T5 and I'm on LED. I had a couple CMHs and double-ended CMHs, and they just ran too hot. And then, I almost burnt the tent down with one once. I was dumb and put it in a tent, not knowing, knew, never been educated, didn't know where to look for education, because it wasn't legal. So who do you talk to? I mean, where do you go to get the advice? I mean, and if you didn't really know a whole lot of people, and yeah, it got warm, real warm. And needless to say, we got rid of them. And I'm still shocked how many people are still purchasing them, because a lot of people have transitioned over to LED, but some of them guys, the metal highlights and the CMHs and stuff, they're tried, true, and trusted. They're not looking to change, because them bulbs give off that sodium that the LED don't. They swear by it, and I personally don't like it. I like to keep my bills cheap. I mean, that was another thing, that kind of made the falling out with the family as far as losing them over cannabis. They had me paying electric bills. They were in there cleaning and everything, and they had everything on the house while I'm gone, like everything. So the bills were getting like $200-300 a month. Now, mind you, my bill was never over $150 a month for my whole house when I had my grow going. And people are like, that's impressive. Yeah, it is. And when they were telling me it was my grow costing the $200 and $300 difference, I was like, there's no way. So when I unplugged it and the bills were still that high from like them running the central air and stuff and all that, I was like, see, I told you. And they didn't want to hear it, and they actually got in an argument over it. I mean, so it's crazy, the smallest things that can deter somebody from liking something, especially in this industry. I mean, but there's a lot of fine lines we're learning. There, like somebody told me that was actually involved on the corporate side. They told me that was running that event. They said there's a very fine gray line between corporate and growers, and if you don't like it, we're sorry, we don't know what to tell you. And I'm thinking to myself, huh, I don't like it. I don't want you to take my right away to grow. I don't want you to think, oh, he ain't allowed to grow that. He's got to come here and buy it. No, I want to grow it myself. I enjoy it. So yeah, definitely. And I don't know what else to say here. It's almost 2 a.m. We've been talking for a while here. I get up about 8 in the morning, so it's going to be a long day tomorrow, but I enjoyed myself, definitely. I think, unless you have any more questions, I think we'll call it a night.
Yeah. Well, we'll call it a night because I can pick you probably till the 420 mark on
Okay,
questions.
definitely, definitely.
But this is the way things work around here. I don't know how much of the show you've caught.
I haven't
This is
caught a
the
whole lot, to be honest. I
eh,
kind of, like I said, we ran across you at Big Cloud. I didn't even know you had a show, and then you're inviting us on, and then it didn't work that week, unfortunately, because I got in a car accident and a bunch of other stuff happened. And uh, yeah, I mean, long story short, we connected finally. I haven't got a chance to watch a lot of your episodes because I'm on the road so much, but I try to when I unwind at night. I pop the YouTube on the TV because I don't have cable, and that's where I watch everything. I'll watch my even my weather forecast. It might be 2 hours late, but at least I know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, and I don't got to pay for my cable bill. And yeah, I'm gonna put you guys in the mix because I got a mix of all my subscriptions on there. I'm not very I'm tech savvy, but a lot of stuff has changed since I've been tech savvy. I graduated from Baker College with a associate's degree of applied science in 2006. I can tell you that the graphic design field has changed a lot, just a lot since then. I mean, technology moves so fast. When I started building websites back then, I was using Notepad and Dreamweaver. And then we went into what they call Adobe Photoshop 5. And now I don't even know what the new one is because I keep the old one because I like it so much. And they want me to upgrade and update. And I just turn the updates off. And I'm like, this works for me. This is what I know. I don't need that fancy man. Everything's cloud based now. You can't even get CD software. You got to download it. And I like to have a copy in case something happens. And you can't do that no more. That's what sucks. But definitely, and I I try to design all my work myself, but sometimes we're rushed and sometimes we're not. But definitely, I think maybe in the near future, when you get some time, we should have you come over and visit with us and chop it up, and we'll shoot the shit the same way. And everything's unedited over where we're at too. It's raw, it's uncut, it's unfiltered, um, and we're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Anchor, you name it. You can find us, and we're gonna get into doing some video too. I'm trying to get comfortable with it. I think it'll be good. The biggest thing is learning my new software and my new mixer here. My mixer is actually built by Zoom. That's the brand, and it I can integrate it to where it can flow through the computer instead of on the SD card. And if I can get it to where the microphones will work with the YouTube for each one of us, that'd be great because then we could all be on there. I'd like to have it where we all have individual cameras, but my other guys they don't even have laptops or Wi-Fi. So it's like, man, if I could get you guys to have cameras at home, we could just do shows from the house instead of having to get together. But kind of like we're friends with another show called the Michigan Grow Bros, and they've taught me a lot. There's a guy over there who's kind of taught me the podcast side of things. His name's Skillbo, and
I
he
actually helped start that show.
really, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I'm up until I'm there till episode 42, I think,
I
maybe
didn't know that.
48, and then
Wow,
I popped off and did this.
that's impressive, definitely. But yeah, he's kind of taught me, and he's like, man, he's been talking to me lately, trying to get me into the video, and he's like, just get Zoom Premium, and you can make your calls. They can call with their phone. You can put your image up and all that and all this, and I'm like, huh, yeah, I could do that. I'm like, but the biggest thing that was deterring me was my alopecia. I was just like, man, I don't want people to see because you can kind of tell right here that I don't got hair. And it's like, well, I don't want people staring at me, and I'm like,
You
but
know,
it is what it is.
I fussed with that tonight, to be honest with you. Any other time, pre when I had the first gave you the invite, the situation, my life's completely changed since we've
Sure,
talked. That's
sure.
why the whatever. But there used to be the girl behind me and all that.
Yep.
And I always liked that it was more personal to me. You know what
Sure,
I mean?
sure.
Even tonight, I was kind of like looking at this. You're my first one. You're my first interview since I've taken the hiatus and
Okay.
changed my environment.
Sure.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm looking in the camera, I'm looking in the screen behind me, and I'm like, jeez, man. You know what I mean? It looks kind of plain Jane. I miss the
Yep.
plants. And then I threw on the background like this. And then and I've done this from day one.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
I
Oh,
throw this
wow.
on, and then I'm like, well,
It's like a
now
green screen.
I don't know. I don't like this for some reason. I feel like this to
I
me,
noticed that, and not to talk bad, Skilbo is a great guy. I noticed he likes to use that option a lot. And but he also told me he does have a green screen that he puts up behind him. And I'm like, man, I almost bought one, but I don't know. I kind
you
of
don't
like,
need it through
yeah,
Zoom
yeah, I don't think so. No.
but for to me, I'm real weird about this. I don't do other shows.
Right.
I'm not necessarily, yeah, I will do yours. You've
Sure,
asked,
sure.
each
You
one,
don't have to,
I
but
believe in returning the favor,
yeah.
but I've just never been out to promote myself. You
Me
know what I
neither.
mean?
I've always tried to give everybody the limelight. That's like, you know, here's an example. Big Cloud's got the Cure Michigan, not to promote their stuff or nothing, but coming up. And Rick over there, I'm like, hey guys, I'm like, I want to help you guys promote this. You let us come into the event, no charge. You let us camp, you let us cover it. What can I do to give back? I'm like, how about an audio ad? And I'm like, I have a guy that does my voiceovers. I don't do them myself because I want him to sound uh, professional. I want him to have good audio, be clear, and just sound good. And I got a guy that does it. And I'm like, I'll charge you the price of what it costs to do the voiceover. And he's like, whoa, really? You don't want nothing? And I'm like, no, I'm not about the money. I'm about just returning the favor and getting it out there. And long story short, the ad's coming. I'm not going to say who they decided to have somebody do the ad outside of my guy. And he's very hugely known in the cannabis industry. I'll put it that way. I don't want to blow it because you guys are going to hear it first with us on our podcast when we play the ad mid-show. We'll play the ad just to kind of promote the upcoming Pure Michigan Cup. And you guys are going to be blown away at who it is, because I'm even blown away at who it is. Like, I'm like, holy shit, I get to talk to this guy on the phone or what? Like, and it's going to be insane. Like, I just, I don't get necessarily this. And that's the thing my brother always says, because I've been in entertainment as a photographer. I don't get the giddiness like other people do around celebrities, because at the end of the day, I know they're like us. I know they don't want you to be like that. They want you to chill. They want you to treat them like a human. And you know, the same way with Mendo. When we talked to Mendo, I got their phone number. I'll admit it. He told me not to share it with nobody and give it out. Would I? Never. It's locked in my safe. I promise you, because we're all in this, and we got to have privacy for our personal life at the same thing. That's why. Yeah, I do a lot on my Facebook, but if any of you guys try to add me on my personal Facebook, which I do post everything through, I won't add you, just because that's my friends and my family and my personal life. But if you want to check out what we're doing, Instagram's where it's at. I'll talk to you there. I don't have a problem. I let very few people in my personal life because it's just how I am. But definitely, you guys, as I get to know people, I let them in. It's kind of like becoming family. And definitely, we're gonna be having some of the guys from the Michigan Grow Bros want to come on the show here in a couple of weeks, so we're hoping to get them on. I've got a lot of different cool interviews. It's been a lot of interviews lately, and not so much grow talk, but we're going to get into doing some more grow talk. We don't necessarily call it grow talk. We call it the blunt breakdown. And basically, we sit there and we break it down. We talk about what's going on in our grow and anything else. It's kind of cool. It gives us a way to give back. Originally I started a thing, and a couple people asked me to bring it back, so I changed the name to Blunt Breakdown. It used to be called Talkin' Toke, and people love that name, but I wanted it to go with the name of the show, so I kind of changed it, and that's what we do. And when we do that, we want to give back to all the companies who made us where we are. So, they didn't ask for an ad. We're going to build them one. We're going to build an ad, and we try to keep our discount code, our show name for all of them. That way, if you go to any of them, you can't forget it, and you're going to save money, because that's what we want you to do. We want you to save money. We're not trying to take your money. We want you to save money and grow and show us what you do, and think of us and be like, well, if it wasn't for them, because at the end of the day, yeah, we want to make money. We do, because it grows the show. I will admit that. Advertising grows the show. But in order to grow the show, you got to have people listening to it. And that's what we focus on. We want to have a great demographic audience that of growers and people who love to consume cannabis and use it and be around it, or be educated on something, or they want to get into it, have another place to go. Yeah, there's a lot of us out here, a lot of shows, but everybody kind of presents it their own way. And where Joe Bob's show might connect with Bill and Larry, Mo might not connect with it because he can't interpret it, because it might be too political for him, or it might be too scientific for him. And so he comes over to where somebody breaks it down in the layman's terms and says, hey, for somebody that don't know what they're doing, this is how we do it, and this is what we did, and it works for us. And we don't know all the terminology, and we don't know what PPFD you need to be at, or VPD you need to be at, or what your environment's like, but we can try to help you point in the right direction. And if we don't know the answer, someone in our network will, and they can help you. And that's what we want. We don't, like I told other podcasts that we've dealt with, we're not out to compete against you. I'm not out to take your followers or down talk you, or put your face in the mud, or anything like that. In my opinion, the table is big enough for us all to pull up a chair and take a bite of the meal and enjoy the fruits of the labor. And that's how my grandpa was too. We'd give you the shirt off our back before we would stay warm ourselves. I mean, that's just how we are, definitely. So, yeah.
I used to worry about the other show things there for a minute, and then I figured I found my own blue ocean.
Yep,
So
definitely. And we're making our own, as we meet people and get to know people. It's been great. We've been invited to other events, and some of them we want to attend, and some of them I personally can't, because my anxiety would be too high in that type of environment. So I try to go to the laxed ones. I like the ones where we can camp, because if I'll get out and I'll get in the crowd for a couple hours, and I'll be great. And then I got to escape and smoke a joint and get away from everybody for a little bit. So I'll go back to my camp. And that's kind of like where I unwind for a couple hours. I might even take a nap. And then I'll come back and I'll intertwine with everybody and enjoy myself, because I got to have that breather in there to kind of, okay, I just took in 500 people around me. Let me breathe for a second and collect my thoughts. And then I'm usually pretty good. And then a lot of people are like, well, how did you do nightlives and concerts and all that? That was before all the trauma hit my life. And I was out there. Like, I used to do stuff for Fifth Third Ballpark. Now I think it's called Lake Michigan Ballpark. It's in Grand Rapids. And they do they host the Whitecaps games, and a friend of mine owns a third of the park, and he's a real estate agent, and he they did used to party in the park out there, and we did that, and and it's not the people that bother me. It's when they get too close and you can't breathe. That's why it reminds me of the bar atmosphere, and that's where my anxiety kicks in, is because when people get drunk around me, I get nervous because a lot of people don't know how to handle themselves. That's why I don't put myself in that atmosphere. And the first Big Cloud event, we talked about it on a show because people were laughing. A guy ate a bunch of shrooms and had a bad trip. And he was screaming at 4 a.m, and they had to ask him to leave after he came down. And needless to say, I didn't leave my tent because, like I said, where we come from out here in the city of Muskegon, unfortunately, a lot of people get shot out here. And if you hear screaming or gunshots or any booms, you're hitting the floor. Like 4th of July for their Fire in the Sky event, I'm sleeping right before the fireworks and somebody let one off. And I'll tell you what, I army crawled the floor and had my head down with a pillow over it for the first boom because I didn't know what it's like. PTSD. And I don't know how I developed it, and it's not that I try to live in fear, but one of my good friends many years ago, when I was in that in the entertainment atmosphere and nightclubs, I had a whole crew that ran my website, and there was 5 or 6 of us, and my buddy Vernal was a DJ and rapper slash singer. The guy was talented. He did gospel rap and other raps too. And he did a party and he DJ'd it, and it was in the Heights. And he left the party, and where it was, you had to walk through an alley to get to where he parked. They murdered him in cold blood in the alley and left him lay there for 5 days before anybody found him.
Jesus.
And yeah, he's not the only one that I've lost like that. And it makes you open your eyes. Last year I did an event. I funded the whole thing. That's why when I told you I did one for charity and ate 14 hot dogs, I used to do events every year for the past 7 years. I haven't done it. I didn't do it this year because I kind of got ruined on the last one. And but I fund the whole thing off my pocket. I rent out a state park. I do a barbecue and car show, and I do live band trophies, tons of giveaways, the whole nine. And last year I did it for gun violence awareness in Muskegon County here. And we raised a decent amount of change for what we had. It was about $500. And there was about 3 or 4 different car clubs that got involved. And we had t-shirts made, and we didn't sell them all at the event. And there was other car shows throughout the rest of the season. So I trusted the other car club with the cash box and the t-shirts. Told them go sell them. I had the key to the cash box. And long story short, I don't know who, but it could have been even my own brother involved, and I hate to point fingers, and I'm not saying it just to say it, I don't know who did it. They all turned on me and told everybody I took the money. Mind you, I didn't have it in my possession. And this was supposed to go to charity. Well, they tried blaming it on me, and everybody was against me. So I pulled the plug and decided not to do the event anymore. And because I still felt bad for the community, I went down and donated $400 out of my pocket to the county sheriffs to use to try to fight some way or adopt a program or start a program for gun violence awareness. It wasn't that we were trying to take away people's guns. We're trying to take it away from the people's that it fell in the wrong hands of. People that don't know how to use one safely. They don't know how to secure it, keep it locked, or keep it concealed or uh, however they needed to keep it. And it was the people that were, buying guns that had the serial numbers ground off them, and they were completing murders and dropping them in the river here. I mean, that's the stuff we didn't want. 14-year-old kids getting guns and murdering other kids. I mean, that's the reality of the city we live in where I'm at. Every day I see it because I watch the police scanner. It's kind of became a hobby ever since COVID started. There was nothing to do around here. So when I worked, I'd listen to the police scanner to see what was going on. And I started becoming like a reporter for them, and where I would report different things going on in town that I seen and stuff like that. And I kind of got known in the local group community. And I yeah, so I wanted to give back to them. And but after somebody took the money, they literally took it and they tried to blame it on me. I was sour on the whole situation to the point that I didn't want to do it no more. I lost my passion, I lost my motivation, and I I just can't do it no more. But now I'm putting that drive that I used to put in the automotive industry, events that I did and stuff, into this. I found my niche where I need to be. I wanted to be involved in this industry for a long time, and I made my own opportunity because originally I wanted to be a trimmer or a bud trimmer, tender. I didn't know a lot about the corporate side, and I just knew I wanted to be involved with it daily. Would I want to do it now? Not so much, but I like doing it for myself. And someday I hope to actually start my own farm if I can get a chance at some land and the prices actually come down or something balances out to where I can afford it here. I want to start my own farm and have an organic outdoor grown farm and get my micro grow license to where I can grow and supply small batch. I don't want big batch, but definitely that's my plan is someday to get there and homestead my land because I don't need a lot to live. Being homeless, that's the thing. My house is too much for me. I was totally content living in my car and I wouldn't hesitate to go back to it. And a lot of people are like, wow, really? It was just easier for me, a lot less, not necessarily responsibility, but a lot less drama. I've had a lot of issues with the house I bought when it comes to plumbing. The it sat vacant and spores ate all my water lines up. And every now and then one will burst. I came home one night, my heater vents were full of water. I mean, it's been rough. And then the car crash, it's wiped out a lot of my savings to the point that I can't afford to do the things that I wanted to do. My plan was to purchase some land, uh, and in a county that allows you to homestead because the county I live in don't, but the next one up does, and they where you can live in a motorhome or camper. I'm in kind of the Amish area, so like um the Amish build cabins and stuff for about 10 grand, and they're big enough for one person. That's all I really need, on top of my grow. I mean, my garage or my grow would be bigger than my house if I ever had the opportunity because I don't need that. And when I was homeless, I intertwined with other homeless people because when you're living in your car and you're staying in a parking lot at your local grocery store or something, and you kind of see the same people every night, you kind of realize who's homeless and who's not, and who's living in their cars and who's fake and who's not, and you get to know people and their stories, and that's kind of how it kind of trickled into this too. I met a lot of homeless people that they're not bad people. People think they're all druggies and they're steal and they're criminals and they're bad people. Not all of them. Some of them are bad, but not all of them. I know a guy, he literally picks up all the trash in our city. And this guy's, I ain't seen him. I'm actually quite worried, because it's been a few years. I'm hoping I see him again, hoping he didn't pass because he was getting old. He was hunchbacked. That's how bad his health was. And The guy would stand sleeping up with a garbage can full of trash under overpasses, sleeping, standing up as cars are blown by him. I mean, to be able to fall asleep like that is it's impressive to me because I couldn't do it. I don't, but I guess once you live on the streets like that, I guess you could sleep anywhere. And this guy would keep it clean, but people would hassle him all the time, like all the time. And they'd call the cops on him and stuff. And come to find out, the guy worked in a factory here and he retired and his wife got cancer and she died. And the guy didn't know how to take care of himself to the point he resorted to the streets. He didn't want to be in the house that they had. He didn't want any of it. And he just kept moving and picking up trash. And that's what he does. And the guy's a veteran even. And it's like, wow, dude, like you served our country and you want to live like this. And he's like, I actually prefer it. And, you know, me as a person, I didn't see it until after I experienced it fully. And it's a lot different, but when you strip all the shit that you take for granted away and you have to figure out the bare necessities, you start to realize you shouldn't take stuff for granted, even the simplest shit. I mean, I went from sleeping on a wrestling mat to sleeping on concrete to sleeping on a Serta. I mean, and I hate to put it that way throughout my life. And you know, you look at that and you say to yourself, well, I'm doing all right. You know, I got food in my belly. I got a bed to sleep in. I got clothes. I got a roof over my head. And I have a way to make an income. Life's really not that bad. And you throw cannabis in the mix, your freedom to grow, something that we haven't had. And I'm thankful, you know, I don't need much else. You know, let me grow my cannabis, let me have a piece of land, and let me stay to myself and my small group of people. And I'm happy. I don't need a mansion. I don't need all the money in the world. I don't need fancy cars. I don't need fancy clothes. I just want good smoke. That's all I want. That's how I was raised, you know. My grandparents raised me, so I have an old soul. Like the stuff I like, a lot of people think people 20 years advanced my age or 10 years advanced my age was like, you know, I like country western music. I like bluegrass. I like jazz. I like the stuff older people liked. You know, I wasn't afraid to sit around the table and play board games instead of being on a computer or something. And it's what we grew up on. We grew up camping, and I think I think cannabis gives me a chance to kind of rekindle the memories too, because I sit back and, like I said, it gives me a chance to unwind, socialize, and relax, kind of reminisce on the good things because I don't like to remember the bad things, but they're there too. Like the reason I got off truck driving, I was under contract. I bought my contract out. They wouldn't let me go. They were having me work 7 days a week, 14 to 16 hours a day. And there was days I would get home. Mind you, it was an hour drive to my dispatch and an hour drive home. So that's 2 hours. And then on top of that, in the state of Michigan, they only have to require you 8 hours rest between shifts. So okay, you take 2 hours off for driving, that gives you six. You get home, you want to unwind because you got to unwind. Not everybody can just fall asleep. And it got to the point, do I take a shower to the night or do I eat? Because by the time I'm done and I'm ready to unwind, I'm going to need about 3 hours of sleep. And then I got to go work 16 hours driving again. You know, and I'm driving 80,000 pounds behind me. I didn't like that because not only because you start to get tired, but you it's not just your life and the hands behind the wheel of that. You got everybody's hands in. And they wouldn't let me go. But then when my grandpa's cancer was getting bad and he was starting to do cannabis and CBD and stuff like that, I wanted to help monitor it. So I knew he was getting what he needed. He's going to the doctor's appointments he needed to go to, and he was forgetting them or showing up a day early, a day late. I went to my boss and you know, I I paid $4,300 cash to buy my contract out. They had me under contract. It was either I paid $4,300 cash or I was tied to the company for 2 years. And because they paid for my schooling. And so I bought it out because I saved my money that from working, driving semi. I saved it some on the side and I bought it out. And they said that they never seen anybody bring that much cash into their office before, let alone buy their contract out. And I brought my grandpa with me, and when I quit my job, because I was man enough to go in person instead of doing it over the phone like most people do. So I walked in there with my grandpa, showed him how he was, and how his health was, and I told him straight up, I'm I'm going to get a different job. I'm going to stay home every day where I can spend the last of his time with him and stuff like that. And they kind of chuckled at me. But I'll tell you right now, from this moment and from that moment on, I don't regret a single minute of it. Even though I went to a lesser paying job, I don't regret spending any time with them because the siblings, prior to him passing, they weren't there since my grandma passed. So 7 years they never came and visit. He always had to go to their house. And I can tell you the next day after he passed, they were there every day. And it shouldn't be like that. And that's why I say I don't regret it, because a lot of people are like, well, don't you regret missing out on all that money? No. I'm so humble that the first time I got $1,000 paycheck in my life, I know that sounds like a lot to some people a week, and to some people it don't. To somebody that comes from a poverty and lower class of living, that's a lot of money. A lot. And the first thing I bought, and people laugh because I'm from the country. I bought a pair of cowboy boots. I could never afford it. I wore them cowboy boots so much in my job. Now, mind you, I did produce hauling. As a semi driver, I would do 15,000 steps a day, and I'm driving semi too. And people are like, how? I'm in and out of cold freezers, distribution centers. I unloaded every load and loaded every load. So I not only drove it, I touched it, delivered it, and quality controlled most of the fruits and vegetables that were in you guys' stores. And yeah, I was all self-taught. I learned how to drive semi in 2.5 weeks. Never backed up a trailer a day in my life. And it's quite impressive how you learn things like that. And same thing with cannabis. I learned how to do it essentially on my own. My brother taught me the fundamentals on top of a few other people. And I finally succeeded. I wasn't able to succeed probably the first 4 or 5 times. I get them so far, get them close to flower and not know what it needed or anything, and I'd kill it. And it was done for. I mean, I was doing bag seeds back then. I didn't know what I was growing. That's why I said earlier, it's great to make a network of people that you know what you're getting when you pay for something to get it. It's quality genetics, it's quality whatever product you need for growing, definitely.
Agree. Totally agree. So I guess I you said you had to go like a good
Yeah,
half hour
I
ago.
got all night. I mean, we can shoot the shit. I don't care. I'll sleep in tomorrow. Yeah.
So you talk about quality genetics. Who are you running as far as the autos? I know a lot of people are very skittish when you
Um,
even mention them.
well, we're running a lot of different ones that we've worked with. Right now, this next run, we partnered up with Seedsman, one of the oldest genetic companies that we know of. One of, I didn't say they are, just one of them. Everybody knows Seedsman. We partnered up with them, and they deal with a lot of other brands. So they shipped this out. We didn't know that at the time when we placed an order. So we got a lot of Fast Buds 420 seeds. We're running some of their autos on this run. I'm running their Blue Dreamatic. I'm running their Bruce Banner. I'm running a Barney's Farm Orange Punch Mimosa. I'm running some Royal Seeds Tropicana Poison. I'm running Dank Seeds, which was the first company we ever dealt with on genetics. Dankseeds.org. They're out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, believe it or not. So we haven't had a lot of communication from him though. So if he listens to this or something, I hope he reaches out to us finally, because it's been a long time. And we're still promoting them just like we are. I don't know if something happened or he went out of business or what, but we're running one of his critical masses, actually two of his critical masses. And I'm trying to think who else we're running off the top of my head. I think that's it right now, but we have ran in the past SoFem Genetics. We've ran Green Wolf Genetics. We've ran Captain Redbeard. And trying to think if there's anybody else off the top. Humboldt Seed Company. Yep, we're working with Humboldt Seed. And I want to say that's about all we've worked with so far. A handful, which is great. I don't want to have too many varieties. I kind of want to top it off at 5 different ones, just because you get too many and then people get confused. Where if you give each one a chance to display a couple, they all get a chance at, I hate to say it, they all get a chance at getting picked. Where if you have, this company has 100, that company has 100, this company has 500, this company has 600 ones on display, or you have 600 different genetic companies that you can offer, I feel like people get confused. They almost get overwhelmed to the point they don't know what to grow or choose. So with these guys, not only are they down to earth and they're willing to talk to you and figure out what your needs are or what you're looking to grow or what kind of terpene profile you're looking to achieve, they also give back to the community. And they're always giving away phenos and doing contests and going to the events and interacting with the community. They're not just somebody that, oh, I'm gonna grow and I'm gonna pollinate and I'm gonna germinate and I'm gonna breed these and I'm gonna get this, from an F5 to an F3 and from an F3 to an F1 and over the next couple years, and I'm just gonna sell them for the money. That's what I'm in it. No, these people are in it for the craft, and they're in it for what they do. They have passion just like we do for what we do, you know. And I gotta laugh, For example, I've got one buddy. You might know him, Green Wolf Genetics. He's gotten a little flack. I seen too, to speak on him, and I laugh about it because he's just like anybody normal. He purchased some genetics and he brought them out and he crossed them, and the people got mad at him, and he's like, "But I bought them, and why can't I?" And they're like, "Well, why we were gonna, well, you didn't." So, it boils down to the point that somebody else did and you didn't, and now that's a fancy strain. Like he's got, oh, I forget what it is. He did a lot of apple fritter crosses, and it was cool. And one of them is that we're going to be running, and the next one is going to be an apple fritter cross. And we just did one of my co-hosts did a reverse quad cross. I can't remember what it was. Harambe's Gold, garlic butter, ace of spades, and something else. It was from SoFem Genetics, and it turned out pretty good. Um, I'm more of a I like my wedding cakes. I like my favorite, even though it didn't turn out as like the first time I remember for some reason. Grease Monkey is my probably my favorite because that was the first strain I hate to say it that I bought legally, even though I bought it from the dispensary, which I bought it from Emerald City back then. They're out of business and I didn't know who they were, but um it gave me couch locked. I mean, my tolerance was probably way lower back then, but I yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, my tolerance is pretty good now. I when I went through a divorce, that was probably the highest my tolerance ever been. I smoked a half in one day to myself. Yeah, that was a lot, but um yeah, I mean,
Divorce will put you there.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when you do it twice. I uh I tried. I don't know if I'll try a third time. It'll be have to be a special woman, like I tell everybody. You know, I uh I had a house with my ex-wife. Talk a little bit more about me, and she had 3 kids already, and fourth one on the way. None of them were mine. I already raised 3 of them that weren't mine for 8 years. And when she got pregnant, that was the final straw. I was so disgusted, I left my bed, the furniture, and gave her my house. Gave her my house, like signed it over. And my
Man,
parents even said that was a stupid move. I signed it over for what I owed on it because I only owed like $3,500. Actually, it was $3,498, but close enough. And I gave it to her for that. And about a year or two later, she sold it for 10 grand, and I paid 25,000 for it. I mean, yeah. I mean, does it hurt? Yeah, but at the way I look at it, I wasn't stuck with the responsibility, and I got to spend time with my grandparents. And if I wouldn't have, I probably wouldn't have got to see my grandma before she passed. So yeah, definitely. I every day, like I said, every day is a learning experience for us over here. I'm always learning some new product or some new company comes along or whatever. I We're always trying different things out. I mean, we've worked, like I said, with 4 or 5 different, maybe even 6 different genetic companies, and they've all been great. Um, I've had some genetics I've tried from some companies in the past that have harmed, and we let them know. I don't know if it was environmental or not, but I've never had really any problems with it a whole lot. I think the one that did harm was because our tank got well over 100 degrees for a whole day, and we didn't realize it because we weren't home. And I think it caused a lot of stress, but we've definitely had some good runs. I can't say that I have a subpar favorite. I've had a lot of good luck with wedding cake, and everybody loves the GG4, so we do a lot of that. But I personally think it's outplayed. Yeah, it's great. It grows great in Michigan. It's basically a Michigan staple strain and I think Girl Scout cookies, in my opinion, just from my experience, are 2 strains that just they prosper here in Michigan, especially for outdoor. But it's not necessarily my flavor palette. They're good, and I'll smoke anything pretty much, any strain. But I like my Granddaddy Perp. I like my Blue Dream. My Blue Dream is probably my favorite if I had to pick one, to be honest. And that is because when I smoke Blue Dream, it's like when I have a headache, it's like it almost instantly takes it away. That strain just works great for headaches, and at least for me anyway. Definitely.
I tell you, you started this interview and you said you were from a small sheltered town, but man, it seems like you really have made the most out of what you've been dealt. You've tuck and rolled and fucking,
Yeah,
come up smiling,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yep. And I'll admit, and I hate to say it, but I talk the truth on everything. I'm organically blunt. I was in Arby's once, just a couple weeks ago, and the guy had seen my Captain Redbeard shirt, and he says, "Oh, that's cool." And he's talking, and he's standing in line, and I'm like, I'll admit I can be cocky. And it's not trying to be cocky. It's just how I am. It's just my demeanor. It's just who I am. And I said, if you like the shirt, you should see the podcast. And he said, well, what's the name of it? And I said, Organically Blunt. And he looks at me and he says, well, it definitely fits the name. And I said, well, sorry, that's just who I am, and he's like, you don't candy coat it. I said, no, I'm not to hiding anything. I said, that's who I am, And he's like, well, it definitely fits you guys. And he's like, I'm going to check you guys out. But I mean, yeah, I've made the most out of this town because, and a lot of people have said, how do you do it every day? And I'll admit, I'll be the first after losing what I call my parents. I've had suicidal thoughts, and it's not that I was going to commit it or needed mental help or anything because I drugged myself out of it, but I was that far into my mind that I was like, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? What am I going to do? Just over and over. And I had to figure it out. And I did. And yeah, people are like, well, you're almost 40 and you had to figure it out. I'm almost 40, but I also lived with my parents, raising them in a way to survive with cancer and COPD and heart issues. And we took care of our family. I guess you could say we're a tribe. And I have had my own houses and been married and stuff like that too, and raised my own. And I've seen both sides of the coin. But, I was kind of sheltered on the whole having to do it on your own, I guess you'd say, truly on your own. Like I tell a lot of people now, is the world is a lot colder than you think it is when you get out there on your own. And the reason I say that is I'm working to become a youth mentor. A friend of mine that I went to school with. This is the story. Another story is he was the guy to sell me my first bag. Remember I told you about the railroad tracks? Well, yeah. Well, he became an addict of different things and an alcoholic, and he went through recovery. And now he runs a recovery center that is non-state funded, nonprofit, non-state organized, no doctor organized. There's no what's the word for it? Curriculum, I guess you'd call it, or schedule. You come and go as you please. And it's a way for people to get off the opiates and stuff. And they're not against cannabis at all. They actually are for it. And he is too. And I eventually, once I can get some time freed up, I want to start mentoring over there, especially the youth, and kind of keep them on a path, because when I speak, a lot of the youth, they somehow draw to me. And I don't know how, but they do. And like when I was a mechanic, I ran a whole department I ran the quick maintenance department for a while. And it was a lot of the high schooler kids that I basically babysat and trained them and the fundamentals of an automobile and how to do the maintenance and tires and stuff like that. And so I would talk to them about my experiences in my life and stuff. And it just so happened I changed a few of them, their lives, and got them out of trouble and on the right tracks. One of them's even in the Marines now. Like he was going down a bad trail. And yeah, I mean, so when I connect with somebody and kind of make a change, that's what I like to do. It makes me feel good. And he runs a center in Muskegon. I don't know if anybody's from this way. If anybody wants to check it out, it's called Life Align. And he he's south. Finally, the local, as crazy as it sounds, the local mental hospital here, or whatever you want to call it, it's called Health West, got involved. they actually have a representative on campus now in case anybody wants to talk or needs that medical help right in his office. And it's amazing. I mean, and every Saturday they do what they call sober Saturdays, and not, like I said, not cannabis, but everything else. And they're okay with cannabis, and they have bonfire, and anybody's welcome, and you come out and talk, and kind of gets you people that are involved in the wrong atmosphere a way to break away from it. And then on Tuesdays, we do Taco Tuesday. You don't even have to bring anything but yourself, and you can eat tacos. Even if you live on the streets and you're homeless, come in, you know. And that's what we're trying to do, is give back. And he likes it for me because I have that marketing, and I know how to interact and reach the demographic. He's actually going to be starting up. I'm going to help manage it if I can find time. Uh, um, uh, Another podcast, but it's going to be about advocacy and sobriety and people that are going through it and that have gone through it, a chance for them to tell their story. And that's what it's going to be about. It's just kind of like we're doing here, but we're interviewing people that are either in sobriety, going through sobriety, overcome sobriety, and stuff like that. People who have fought through the word of addiction and stuff like that. Because a lot of these people in my town, believe it or not, they're addicted to meth and methamphetamines. And there's been so many labs here and that have gotten busted, including my own family. My own family, some of my family members are locked up for having one of the biggest meth labs in the state of Michigan. And they're spending life in prison for it, no lie. And what happened is the house exploded. Yeah, propane exploded. Yep. And nobody died, but yeah, they were cooking, and it just so happened to be unoccupied while they were cooking, and gas leak, and boom, methamphetamine explosion. The whole house was completely leveled. I mean, and then they kind of gave him a slap on the wrist after that, in a sense. They kind of got away with it, and not fully. I mean, they did some time and stuff, and they got back out and they did it again. But this time they bought a school bus and they put it in a cornfield and grew the corn around it and did it out there. Same thing happened. It exploded. They got caught, got life in prison. And that's the biggest thing out here, is so many people are addicted to it. And we're just trying to get people broke away from it. We do community cleanups and stuff too. Like, he got a bunch of sharp boxes from the local health department, donated to us, and they went into the neighborhoods, the rougher ones, where a lot of the crack and the cocaine and the heroin use, mostly crack and heroin and methane, are used. And he picked up in one day alone 253 needles off the streets. And yeah, they're just thrown on the streets. And the scariest thing is these are where families are, little kids that play outside, that are, it's a poverty area. Kid picks that up and plays with it, or steps on it, or that person that injected themselves. One, you don't know what's in it. Two, what if they had HIV or something else? Now that kid just had that introduced to their bloodstream, and we don't need that. So we're trying to create a safer environment over on this side of the state, and then in the Muskegon County and surrounding areas, just and an avenue, because a lot of these people that are addicts, they don't want to go through a medical thing. They just want somebody there to support them and help them that's been through it. They don't want somebody to, for example, and I hate to say it, oh, you took this, and this. Let's get you off this, but let's put you on Subraxon, or let's put you on something like that, to get you off it. So they're basically using one thing to wean you off something, just to replace it with something else. And Yeah, it helps people. I'll admit, I know of people that take it, and it's changing their life. But I can tell you, without it, it wouldn't be good. And that's why we're about the cannabis and stuff like that. Is if we can find a way for you to kind of get what you need, even if it's like a pain relief from cannabis of some sort, versus that, we would rather have you do that. Like he said, you know, if you're an addict and you think you know the only way you're going to quit is to go jump in a ditch every day and play in the water. If you got to jump in ditches, we'll take you. Like whatever you need, we're going to help you get on the path you need, you know. And like I said, I've connected with a lot of homeless people. I've met some that they just don't trust anybody, you know, me included. I had one, the guy wouldn't even take a can of Mountain Dew from me unopened. And I'm like, dude, you're sitting out here on the curb. You've been out here in 90-degree heat all day. I got a cold one right here in the cooler. We take it? No. Then he took that. And then the next time I seen him, mind you, we made a connection. I even had my buddy come down there and connect with him from the center, like, because he lives right in the area. And he's like, yeah, I'll come down and talk to him and see if we can't help him get on his feet, find a job, get him some clothes, you know, get him into some housing, whatever he needs. And the guy was Asian descent. He didn't speak a lot of English. I still see him every day. He won't take our help. He won't take it. And I offered him a water a couple weeks ago, and he wouldn't take it. But he was like, water, water. What kind of water? You know, what do you mean water? And I'm like, is this guy on something? We need to help this guy because he was like confused when I showed him and tried to give him a bottle of ice mountain water, and he wouldn't take it. He would not take it at one bit. But if you go up to him and give him 5, 10, 20 bucks, he'll take it. So I'm starting to think he's an impersonator, and it's sad because it's taken away from the people that need it. And yeah, I mean, because I've caught him like way down 45 minutes down south in another city, and I'm like, how'd you get down here? Like, I understand the hitchhike, but he had new clothes on and a haircut, like not like store clothes, but like you could tell he got a change of clothes and they were clean and he got a fresh haircut. And I'm like, I'm proud of you, man, if you're doing good and you're getting on your feet. And then I see him the next week and he's like passed out under a tree behind our Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking our community can do better than this. So me being the person that he didn't want to accept my help, and I wasn't necessarily trying to be mean, but he looked like he was passed out, like from the heat. And I'm like, well, he don't want nothing to do with me. I'm gonna have somebody check up on him. So I called for a check well-being, which is through the police do. Police never even showed up. I sat in the parking lot for 4.5 hours from afar watching. They didn't even show up. Like they didn't even care. So they're just as guilty, and I'm not, it's not that I have anything against them, but if you say you're there to serve and protect, you should serve and protect the people when they need you, and I was just upset because they took down my name, they took down my number and everything. Like I didn't even want to give them my information when I called. And I did because they're like, we're going to call you back. We're going to have somebody come talk to them and make sure they don't need anything and they're not happy because he's acting disoriented, is what I thought. And I'm like, is he dehydrated? Is he hallucinating? What's going on? And yeah, they never showed up. Never. I'm like, man, what if that would have been an emergency? Like, what if this guy would have been slumped behind the wheel of a car or something? And I just feel that as people, even in me, I can do better to do something. If I can offer anything, I try to do it. I I guess it just makes me feel complete when I can help somebody or re-educate somebody in any way possible. So yeah. So I see you got these mannequins behind you. You do the clothing yourself or
No, I have somebody print them off for me. No, I don't do the t-shirts.
okay.
But I want to kind of get back, props to you for, doing what you do there. That's a pretty incredible thing. The
Yeah.
message I like to spread here on the channel is random acts of kindness.
Yep.
I end
Yep.
every show with, random acts of kindness can and does change lives. Try to help
Yes.
somebody today.
Definitely. Definitely.
So I really appreciate what you're doing because them are true acts, random acts of kindness, to be
Yeah.
honest with
Yeah.
you.
Definitely. We like we said, we're just trying to give back to the community. They and I'm trying to help them at the same time, and it makes me feel good because as crazy as it sounds, the whole center is ran by everybody I went to school with. And some of them were my best friends that I fell out of because they actually got into hard drugs and I wasn't into that. And to see them clean and they have babies now and they're married and they have a house and kids and a good job and they're helping others people get on the right path. It impresses me. I mean, it's like, man, I didn't think you were gonna make it out. Some of these people, like they were so far addicted, like they didn't even know who they were half the time. I mean, because they were so out of it, and most of these people were on methane, and you know, it's and a lot of people say, well, why is it so popular in your area? Well, believe it or not, heroin and cocaine were the biggest in our area. I mean, you can rent motel rooms downtown for $35 a night. Get yourself a prostitute right there and get you a bump right there. And you can pay by the hour. That's how grimy it is down there. Yeah. And they don't care because they're not even American. They're just out for the money. And it's nothing about nationality neither, or whatever race or ethnic you are. It's just the point that they're not American enough to care. They just are simply caring about the money, and that's it. But um, yeah, and it's crazy that they adopted to the meth because the high lasts long. They're not having to take a bump or a hit or whatever they call it every 15 minutes to 45 minutes, where they hit it and it lasts an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours before they got to get high again. And that's why they have adopted that so much, is at least in this area, is because and it's sad because I watch it rip families apart, and some of these people, they put that before their kids and stuff, and you're like, man, what do you think your little kid's gonna think about you when and it's like, I couldn't do that to my kids. So, if I can help you change your life better, excuse me, before it's too late, that's what I want to do. And my buddy started out as a church mentor, and he came over to this uh center, and you know through his recovery, he got to buy a house and got to get on his feet. Stuff he would have never dreamed of. Like, you would think he would be living couch to couch, but now he's got a family and they just had a baby and everything's great. I mean, to say it's not possible is an understatement. I mean, you can come out of anything if you have enough drive and the right support and the right people around you. So, yeah, definitely.
That is awesome. I understand you haven't watched a lot of the shows, and that's fine. You know what I mean? We
That's
only got
gonna
so
change.
much
That's gonna
time.
change now, I think, because
But man, I kind of squirreled there. But one of the things that I talk about a lot too is a lot what you're saying here. I'm a huge advocate for
Definitely,
cannabis in place of pharmaceutical drugs in
definitely.
general. And it really warms my heart to hear the rehab work you want to do, because that's right along the lines of what I have talked about over the years. I'm a firm believer in cannabis all
Yep,
the way around.
definitely.
And I've seen people recover from harder drugs, through, RSO replacement, a little tit for
Yep,
tat, you know. But I think moreover, it would be nice to have a cannabis farm or rehab to
definitely.
where you took these people in and you one-on-one with them with the RSO, kind of like you're talking about
Yep,
there. But then on the second half of that, as we've talked about with the growing side of things, when you learn to grow, you grow yourself.
yep,
And
exactly.
and I think that would be the perfect second half for a recovering a
Definitely,
recovering addict in general
definitely. And
to
and
rediscover
my
themselves.
yes, and my plan, my ultimate go in my grandpa's legacy. And I don't know if I'll ever get to do it. The Mendo Dope Boys are doing shows, are classes now out on their farm. A couple other ones out in California offer it. Nothing really around here, but I would like to open, just like you said, almost like a school. I mean, it would be cool if someday it could be federally funded for financial aid, so people that can't afford it could go. That's the ultimate goal. But is to basically, like, just like they're doing, from almost from a seed to harvest, a complete course. You come once or twice a week. You know, we do something every week. You learn something different. You learn the different stages, and eventually you do everything hands on. So eventually you'll grow your veg, your flower, and your harvest your own plant. I mean, and that's what I would love to be able to do. But to do it on a rehab, yes, that definitely, because a lot of people find comfort in it, and it's a way for them to express themselves too. So, like, there's so much good. Like you said, you grow from it. You do. You really do.
I'd like to address something else you said this evening, and uh you made the comment of 40 years old and you don't know. You don't know. I think we're all guilty of that, my friend, myself
Yeah.
included. And I'm not going to discount myself on this.
Right.
We all live in this world thinking we have endless amount of time.
Exactly.
Everything that we take for granted that it's going to be that way tomorrow. You know what I mean? With your grandparents,
Yep.
I greatly respect that, my friend. Your
I
morals
mean,
are
I
in the
lived a
right
great
place.
childhood with them. I mean, they gave me, I hate to say it, they gave me pretty much everything I want within reason. But yeah, they spoiled me, but a lot of it I worked for too. And a lot of it, I learned the old school hospitality. I call it Southern hospitality. A lot of people do think I'm from the South because of how I was raised. They're like, "Where are you from?" No, I was raised right here, but well, you act like you're from the South because you say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, please, thank you. You open doors. You say you're welcome. You appreciate stuff. Yeah, it's just how I was raised. When you're raised in a farm agricultural town, it tends to be a lot more, I hate to say it, but a lot more hospitality in the home, to where people are a little more humble, it seems like. Not all, I'm not saying it's like a geographical thing, but it tends to be more abundant, I guess, more noticed in these small agricultural towns. People, they gather around the family will gather around the table and eat dinner on Sunday. They'll grow their own green beans, and you'll have them on the table that Sunday. Like, and they're thankful for everything. And that's how we were raised, is just to be thankful for what you got. And if you can grow it yourself, you're saving money because your family don't got a lot. And you're learning something at the same time, I think everybody should learn how to can their own vegetables, because if there's ever anything happens, you can preserve them and have them for an emergency, and you just never know. I mean, I'm not a hunter. That's the only thing is I come from agricultural and hunting land areas to where I don't hunt. And it's not that I can't shoot the deer or anything else. It's after you shoot it, the gutting, I can't do that. I don't have a stomach for that kind of stuff. So I've tried it. But I mean, no, it's definitely, it boils down to it makes you feel wholesome when you can re-educate and teach somebody and keep them on the right path. And it just makes me feel good all the way around. And my grandfather was the same way. Like I said, I'd love to start like a school someday to where you could do that, but I don't know how practical it is, and I don't know what all was required, but it would be cool to be able to teach, classes even to where people can come and learn some fundamentals of growing and stuff. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even know where to even get a seed. I mean, or a clone. I see it all the time, and that's like one of our genetics companies, Captain Redbeard, says to me. He says, "Man, you pushed a lot of my seeds last month. What can I do for you?" And I'm like, continue to give me phenos? I don't know. I don't need nothing. Like, I'm good. And that's the thing, and that was the same thing with my old company, which I ran was Michigan Evening Out, was when I did photography and stuff. A lot of my people said, well, aren't you in it for the money? You should be making some money. And I think it did get to that point, and I think that's kind of why it burned out, is because I got to the point where I should have been making money and I should have been charging, but I wasn't, because I just wanted the experience and to continue to network, and wasn't charging for my services, to the point that when I did start to charge, all the companies that I was messing with pulled out. They were like, well, it's not free no more. We don't want it. And that's kind of why I got away from doing the entertainment stuff. I was doing MMA fights and stuff too. And when I started charging for the content, they said no. There was times where guys would bring their crotch rockets, like the guy that was supposed to pay me, the promoter, would bring his crotch rocket to the cage event. And right before it'd be over, he'd jump on it and jump out the back door and take off so he didn't have to pay me. Mind you, I just did 8 hours of video and photo. And I got to edit it all, and I'll produce a DVD that they can put out. They don't do nothing. I produced it all, and I wasn't getting paid for it. And when I finally said, hey, I'm not going to do it no more, it kind of put a stop to everything, because I wasn't doing it for free. And that's happened a lot with a lot of different avenues I've taken, is I got the kind heart, and now I'm kind of at the point where I need to make a little bit of return, not a lot, but a little bit, to where, if I can put an ad on there and make an extra $100 a month, and you're making thousands a month off it, hey, I'm happy. I'm not looking to get rich. I'm just looking to build my equipment and build my advertising and my network. And the bigger I get, the bigger you get, the bigger I get. I know that sounds weird, but if I have 100,000 people chiming in every week, that's 100,000 people that see your product. You get more sales. So I charge a little bit. Eventually, I make a kickback. We thought about doing some of the other podcasts do Patreons, where their listeners can support the show and stuff like that. We haven't done that yet, and it's not that I don't want to. I don't feel we're big enough for one, and for two, I kind of want to give more versus take. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I can respect that. I really can. I've
Yep.
tried my best not to monetize, not to take a damn thing from this. It
Yep.
changes once you get that money. The love's not there. It seems to become more work.
Exactly.
I do have a Patreon. It was more kind of forced than anything. I never mention it.
Sure.
I never mention it other than just right now because we're talking about it.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird things that does it help out? Yes.
Right.
You feel a little guilty about it? Yes.
Yeah. Yep. But I know, and a lot of people say to me, they're like, "You're not gonna charge?" No, I'm not gonna charge for that. Like, same thing with Big Club. Like I said, promoting their upcoming event, and that the price that I gave, like, you'll never, ever, ever find an ad that cheap, especially an audio ad, ever. And and now they're getting it for free. I mean, it's my way of giving back, and it's not to talk personal or monetary or finances, but it's the point that they give me an opportunity to meet people such as yourself and other people. It's my way of giving back. If I can promote their upcoming event and tell the event on some of my episodes, that's going to get more people out there for everybody. I mean, so it benefits everybody as a whole, not just myself or not just them, because, some of these people, like, for example, somebody said, hey, I don't want to go to the dispensary, but where can I get good quality flower? Well, come out to the market events, come out, and there's plenty on store of all different kinds, and you can find what you're looking for. And if you're MMMP, well, even better. They might even give you a discount or work with you, and that's what's great, And I like I said, I met everybody at these events. I meet people from so many backgrounds. It's kind of why I'm starting. It's starting to become my new thing. I like going to them, but I don't know. I seen that they got a few that go into November. I'm wondering how the camping's going to go for that, because I don't know if I want to camp with snow on the ground.
Yeah, the organic hump there in November. We were
Yeah.
talking about that last
Yep.
night.
Yep.
Oh, that's gonna be interesting to say the least.
That's my birthday weekend too. And I'm like, well, I might go down there for my birthday, but I'm like, well, if there's snow on the ground, I don't know. But I'm
Well,
supposed to be getting my other car back by then. So hopefully, and my other car's set up more for car camping and stuff. And I can put a little heater in there that runs off a cigarette lighter, and it's ceramic heater, and it keeps it warm. I run it off a jump box for a couple hours, and it keeps the car warm. But I mean, other than that, it shouldn't be terrible, but we'll see what happens. I could maybe get a hotel.
we are talking about, big clouds there. That's so far down, fucking
Yep.
November,
Yep.
Michigan, that could be 60 degrees.
It could be too. Yeah, definitely.
You gotta love Michigan like that. I have a love-hate relationship with Michigan for that, to be honest with you. But
Definitely, definitely. I mean, we went to Nashville and Memphis for New Year's last year. Just spur of the moment, my spontaneousness. My buddies didn't believe we were going to go and get some barbecue. And I said, let's go to Memphis and get barbecue. And they said, you ain't going to drive there. I said, let's go right now. They said, no way. I said, pack your bags. We're going. And we went, and it was like 70 degrees, shorts and t-shirt on New Year's. We get back here and it's like half a foot of snow. And I'm like, man. But yeah, it's the point that I don't like the cold. So I don't know if I would camp in it. Definitely. But I think for real, I'm gonna get off here, get some shut eye. Definitely.
I can appreciate that. I gotta go. I've got to work early in the morning too,
Ooh,
but I wouldn't
yeah.
cut you off. I wouldn't cut you off. I would
No,
let
no,
you
no. You're
go.
good. With that
But
being said, if you got anything else you want to know or ask or want me to say, I can do that. Otherwise,
I
I'm pretty
do.
good.
I do have a few things I'd like you to say.
Okay.
First of all, I wanna let you know how things work around here. I started about an hour ago to tell you this. But if you watched a few episodes, basically the invitation that I gave you tonight is always good now. So basically, there's a few aspects of what happened here on the channel. There's this, the one-on-one with me, and then there's the Weed Nerd World. Monday nights are mandatory Weed Nerd World. You can
Okay.
count on that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And any other nights, they're basically filler. So, except for tonight, because I'm going to bed. I worked 12 hours today and then did a show.
Yeah.
But
I know how that
uh,
goes.
usually it would be so if we shut down, I would usually pick up with Weed Nerd World. So anything that has the Weed Nerd World title in it, if you've got your notifications on,
Okay.
you're invited.
All right.
There's no invitation at this point. You see it ding, it says Weed Nerd World, you got a joint, you want to come on and hang out and talk with everybody.
And where's that
No
at, if you don't mind me
invitation.
asking?
Pardon
Is
me?
that what platform or whatever? Where can I find it?
Same link, Zoom.
Okay.
So anytime that
All
you
right.
like it comes on, you see us while I'm talking, you're like, hell, I want to be a part of that.
Okay.
No invitation. You hit that link, I let you on, you come hang.
That's cool. Definitely. Yeah. I'm down for that. Okay.
Welcome to the Weed Nerd World, brother.
Hell
You
yeah.
definitely I know I've enjoyed the conversation tonight. I know
Definitely.
a lot of
I'm not,
other people
like I
would
said,
like
I'm
to
not as
talk with you.
educated on the terminology and everything as everybody else, but I'm always learning. I mean, when I'm on the road every day, all I listen to is other shows and podcasts and educational stuff. And I hate to say it, I'm like a knowledge sponge. I absorb it from all directions. I'm reading books before I go to bed. I'm watching videos. I'm listening to podcasts all day long. And that's just me. Not everybody does that, but I'm trying to absorb as much as I can because it's interesting. Like, did you know? Here's a weird fact for you to end the night before we let you go. Did you know that Michigan now has more dispensaries than it does McDonald's?
Wow. That's pretty impressive because there's a lot of McDonald's.
Bay City alone has 26 dispensaries.
Wow.
Yep. And I just heard that from another show. I ain't taking credit for it. I just heard it. Michigan actually produced them results and these people found the statistics from the state of Michigan to the point that, yeah, they said they have more dispensaries licenses now than they do McDonald's locations across the state.
That's crazy.
Yep. So,
but that's not going to be the last that we hear from you, though.
No.
I got one more thing from you. One more thing.
All right.
And basically, this is what I call the sound bite. At some point, this will be a commercial for your episode.
Okay.
This is the only part of the show that I do record. Basically what I'm looking for, my version would be, hey, this is Eagle and I'm on fucking talking shit with Eagle episode 678. You can put whatever you want before that or after that. You can plug your show.
All right.
I don't care.
Let me know when you're ready.
I am ready.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for letting me become a participant on the fucking Talking Shit with Eagle show. This is Jay Blaze with Organically Blunt. Y'all have a blessed night.
Perfect. With that being said, I have really enjoyed tonight's conversation and getting to know you. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you at some of those events, if not here in the Weed Nerd World.
Definitely.
Hell yeah. Thank you for taking the time to talk tonight, man.
Thank you.
Really
we look forward to
you.
hearing the recap. So you have a great evening. Thank you.
You have a good night, my friend.
You too. Bye-bye.
With that being said, for the rest of you guys, thank you for tuning in. Again, tomorrow, 11:30, Asini will be here. Thank you for tuning in. Unfortunately, no Weed Nerd World tonight. I spent 12 hours out in the sun and I am whooped and I have to get back to it first thing in the morning. So with that being said, you guys know the deal. Please do something nice for somebody. Brandon Meyer's kindness do save lives. With that being said, me and my friend here are out of here. Thank you, my friend.